Hey friends, before we dive into tonight's story, did you know that nearly 80% of the people who watch these videos aren't subscribed? If you're enjoying this kind of content, consider hitting the subscribe button. It really helps a lot, and it keeps these long stories going. Also, I'd love to hear from you. What time is it right now where you are, and which city are you listening from tonight? And if these stories help you sleep, feel free to tap the thanks button to support the channel. It truly means a lot. All right, let's get into it. The moon hung low over St. Peter's Basilica, its silver light pooling on the cobblestones as I stepped off the golf cart and into the hush of the Vatican gardens. My boots made no sound on the centuries-worn stones, but every nerve in my body buzzed like the fluorescent hum of a broken street lamp. I'm Officer Marco DeSantis, badge VCP-47, and I've walked these grounds for a dozen years, seen pickpockets, protesters, the occasional lost tourist. Never anything like this. I'd been finishing a perimeter check near the Swiss Guard Tower when dispatch crackled. Unusual activity, Archive Wing B, no further details, investigate. Routine, except Archive Wing B is sealed at night. Cardinal's orders. Only approved scholars with Vatican clearance enter those vaults. Elena Vitale, my partner, and I exchanged a look. She shrugged on her gloves. Let's go see what they broke this time. The bronze door to the archives loomed ahead, its surface etched with papal insignia. My flashlight beam danced across the Latin inscription, Custodes Veritatis, Guardians of the Truth. I pressed my palm to the scanner. No entry. Whoever was inside bypassed security. I radioed dispatch. VCP-47 to base. Archive Wing B unauthorized access. Requesting backup. Static. No answer. Elena eased the door open with a slim gem. It swung without protest, revealing a corridor lined with dusty manuscripts and chained ledgers. The air smelled of mildew and ink. My flashlight caught footprints in the dust. 2 sets, heavy-soled boots, leading deeper into darkness. I swallowed. Every patrol drill I'd ever learned told me to wait for backup. Every instinct told me those footprints belonged to someone, or something, I didn't want to face alone. We followed the prints past marble busts of long-dead pontiffs, their stone eyes gleaming in the beam. A single candle flickered on a side altar, though no match was struck. The flame bent as if in a silent wind. Elena's breath caught. I felt the hair on my neck stiffen. Behind us, the corridor stretched into shadow, the walls absorbing the light. A distant scrape echoed, stone on stone, coming from a side doorway marked Archivum Obscurum. I drew my weapon, heart hammering. "Stay close," I murmured. My voice sounded foreign in the hush. Elena nodded, hand on her radio mic. We stepped through the lintel into a crypt-like chamber. The floor was bare rock, the ceiling arched like a rib cage. Candle sconces ringed the room, their flames low, revealing a single hooded figure kneeling at an altar cracked with age. Silence pressed in, thick as velvet. The figure's robes were white as bone, hood drawn so deep no face showed. I swallowed past the lump in my throat. "Vatican City Police," I called. Voice steady, though my pulse roared. "Step away from that altar." The figure did not move. I took another step. The air turned icier, my breath misting. Elena's radio slipped from her grasp. The clatter sounded deafening. The figure's head snapped up. No face, just darkness under the hood. A whisper rose, unearthly in Latin. I recognized none of the words, but the cadence was ritualistic. The candles flickered violently, shadows leaping across carvings of saints whose eyes seemed to bleed wax. The hooded figure rose, gliding toward us without moving its legs. My gun felt useless. Elena's hand trembled on my arm. I forced myself to breathe, to think. Then the figure pointed at the altar. I stepped closer, heart in my throat. The crack in the marble formed the same twisted papal seal I'd seen only once before, in an obscure manuscript warning of a soul-binding ritual. Custodit mentem, I whispered, reading the arcane script, guard the mind. I felt a tremor run through me, as if my own thoughts were leaking away. Suddenly, the chamber door slammed. Elena screamed. I spun, yanking on the handle. It wouldn't budge. The chanting rose, a chorus of lost voices swirling in the darkness. I grabbed Elena's hand. "This way," I hissed, shoving her toward a narrow archway the figure had revealed. We ducked inside as the chanting crescendoed, the air vibrating with desperation. A spiral staircase descended into blackness. Each step groaned under our weight. I kept my flashlight trained on the stone walls, slick with moisture. The stairs opened into a low tunnel lined with alcoves full of scrolls and reliquaries. At the far end, a pedestal held an ancient codex, its pages splayed open, ink running like blood. The Latin letters writhed on the parchment. My stomach turned. "We shouldn't be here," Elena whispered, voice cracking. I nodded, but the tunnel behind us sealed with a grinding crash. The chanting stopped. In the sudden silence, I heard my own heartbeat. I stepped forward, drawn to the codex, the words twisted. "They who forget themselves become stone." A rush of vertigo nearly dropped me to my knees. Behind me, the hooded figure appeared at the tunnel mouth, silent. I drew my weapon again, hand shaking. The figure lifted a skeletal hand, palm outward. I felt a pressure against my skull, as if invisible fingers squeezed my thoughts. My vision blurred. Elena gasped. I fought to steady my mind. Then the figure retreated. The tunnel door clicked open. Elena grabbed my arm. "Run!" We bolted up the stairs, two at a time, the codex's final words echoing in my head. "Beware the Watchers of Stone." We burst back into the mosaic corridor. The bronze door to Archive Wing B swung shut behind us, as if nothing had happened. I radioed dispatch again, static. The footprints in the dust were gone. The candles in the sconces were unlit. Only the hush remained, as though the vault had never been breached. Elena leaned against the wall, tears in her eyes. I pressed my back to hers, struggling to breathe. "We seal it," I said hoarsely. "Nobody enters. Cardinal's orders." Elena nodded. We retraced our steps through the gardens. The moon was still out, serene. The basilica glowed in the distance, innocent. But I know what lies beneath. I know what follows in the silence. Now I lie awake, listening for chanting in the vents. Every shadow in my room seems to move. I catch myself tracing the shape of that cracked seal in my dreams. And I wonder, did we escape, or did we bring something back with us? The moonlight slanted through the stained glass windows of the Swiss Guard Tower, fracturing into ghostly shards on the ancient cobblestones below. I stepped off the patrol cart, heart in my throat, and swallowed against the chill that wasn't entirely from the night air. I'm Officer Marco DeSantis, Vatican City Police, badge VCP-47. I've walked these grounds for 12 years, seen lost tourists, petty thieves, the occasional protest, but never anything like this. It began with a crackle on the radio just after 12:15 a.m. Unit VCP-47, report to Archive Wing B, unusual activity reported. No further details. Archive Wing B at night is forbidden territory, sealed by Cardinal's order after sundown. Only approved scholars may enter by daylight. Elena Vitale, my partner, flicked her flashlight on and shrugged. "Someone's testing the grout again," she murmured. But when we reached the bronze door, Etched with papal insignia and the words Custodes Veritatis, there was no grout issue. The electromagnetic lock had been forced. I scanned the dust at the threshold. 2 sets of footprints, heavy-soled boots, leading into darkness. I clicked on my radio. Dispatch, this is VCP-47. Unauthorized entry archive B, request immediate backup. Static. No answer. I exchanged a look with Elena. She swallowed. Backup's a myth down here at night, she said softly. I nodded. Protocol says wait. Instinct screams move. We slipped inside. The corridor lay silent except for the hum of our flashlights. Shelves of chained manuscripts loomed like silent sentinels. The air smelled of old parchment and damp stone. My beam caught a toppled lectern, its open ledger face down in dust. I knelt, turning the page. Ink smeared, but the date was clear. 1673. Someone had rifled centuries of records in minutes. A soft scrape echoed from ahead, stone on stone. Elena stiffened. I drew my sidearm, voice low. Vatican City Police. Show yourself. No response. Only the distant drip of water and our own breathing. We followed the scrape into a side alcove. Candle sconces lined the walls, yet no candles burned. One flickered to life as we passed, then died. The effect was strobe-like. Shadows dancing across mosaic floors depicting saints and martyrs. My gut tightened. At the end of the alcove, a heavy door stood ajar. I pushed it open to reveal a vaulted chamber, bare rock underfoot, arched ceiling like a giant's rib cage. In the center, an altar carved from white marble lay cracked, dark fluid seeping from the fissure. Kneeling before it was a figure in a white hooded robe, head bowed. Silence pressed in. I swallowed. Step away from the altar. My voice cracked. The figure remained motionless. Elena's radio slipped from her belt, clattering against stone. The sound reverberated like a gunshot. The figure's head snapped up. No face, only darkness under the hood. Then a whisper, low, rhythmic, Latin. I recognized none of the words, but they vibrated in my chest. The robe stirred, though no breeze blew. Candle flames along the walls flickered violently, elongating the hooded silhouette until it towered above us. Elena stepped back, voice trembling. Marco. I felt the temperature drop. My breath came out in mist. I clicked on my night vision goggles. Static. The chamber remained empty green ghost light, but the whispering persisted. I stepped closer to the altar. The crack formed a symbol. An inverted papal seal, entwined with thorn-like filigree. I traced it with my flashlight. 2 keys crossed beneath a twisted tiara. A ritual binding, centuries old, rumored in guard legends, but never proven real. Custodate mentem, I whispered. The same phrase etched in forbidden manuscripts, guard the mind. Behind me, the hooded figure glided to the far wall, merging with shadow. My heart thundered. I radioed again. Silence. Elena's hand found mine. We need to leave, she pleaded. I nodded, but couldn't tear my eyes from the altar. A sudden crash, something heavy falling in the darkness beyond the arch. The chanting ceased. The chamber door slammed. Elena screamed. I yanked on the handle. Locked. The hush that followed was worse than noise. My flashlight flickered. We go through the tunnel, I said, voice hollow. The arch behind the altar revealed a narrow passage. We ducked through as the marble altar seemed to groan, the crack widening. The passage sloped downward on rough steps. Each footstep echoed. At the bottom lay a hidden vault, rows of ancient scrolls, reliquaries, and one pedestal holding an open codex. Its pages writhed, ink like living veins. I approached, nauseated. The script twisted in Latin. He who forgets himself becomes stone. My reflection shimmered in the polished surface, then warped. A soft scraping returned. The hooded figure emerged at the tunnel mouth silent. It raised one hand. I felt pressure in my skull, as if unseen fingers squeezed my thoughts. Panic clawed at me. I grabbed Elena. "Run!" We sprinted up the stairs. The chanting resumed, a cacophony of tortured voices. Candles along the way flared, then vanished. Frescoes of saints on the walls seemed to weep shadow. I half fell, half climbed until we burst back into the mosaic corridor. The bronze door closed behind us with a decisive click. Silence again. Dust settled. The crack in the altar's symbol echoed in my mind. Elena leaned against the wall, shaking. I pressed my back to hers, gasping. "We seal it," I rasped. "No one goes down there." She nodded. We retraced our steps through the gardens, the moon serene, oblivious. The basilica glowed, peaceful. But I know what lurks beneath. I know the watchers in the dark. Tonight, I guard more than cobblestones. I guard my own mind. The cold torchlight vanished as the bronze door swung shut behind us, leaving only the wavering glow of our flashlights. I leaned in close to Elena, voice barely more than a breath. "Listen. We're not safe until we hit the gardens." She nodded, eyes wide, and we moved. Through the mosaic corridor we ran, every footstep amplified by the vaulted ceiling. The saints in the frescoes above seemed to watch, their painted eyes tracking our flight. The air thrummed with an afterimage of chanting, an echo lodged in stone. My hand tightened on my service pistol, though I doubted steel could stop what lurked below. We passed the sacristy door, its carved oak panels pocked with age, and I paused. A soft scratching came from within. Protocol: investigate all disturbances. Reality: I wanted to vomit. Elena tugged me onward. Not now. At the hallway's end, a narrow spiral staircase led upward. Each step was worn smooth. I half expected it to collapse. My flashlight beam caught a smear of dark fluid on the railing. Fresh. I swallowed. "Blood?" Elena whispered. I nodded. The smell of iron trailed the smear. Whoever, or whatever, came up behind us had scraped against that stone. We emerged onto the colonnade outside St. Peter's Basilica. Moonlight flooded the open space. The arcade's white marble pillars gleamed. Silence here was unnatural. No birdsong, no distant traffic, only the soft hum of Vatican security cameras. Elena exhaled. We made it. Not yet. I swept the area. The gardens lay beyond, statues half hidden in shadow. We crossed the plaza, boots clicking on travertine. I radioed dispatch again. Static. My stomach twisted. Even the usual night guard, Swiss or gendarme, should have answered. A movement near the Neptune fountain caught my eye. A flash of white robe drifting between yew hedges. The hooded figure. It paused, head bowed, then vanished into the labyrinth of clipped shrubs. I drew Elena back. That way. We plunged into the gardens. The scent of jasmine was overpowering, as if the air itself tried to soothe. Paths curved between sculpted hedges, statues of saints and angels peering from niches. Our lights carved narrow cones through the darkness. At the grotto wall I saw claw marks gouged into the stone. Deep. Fresh. Elena swallowed. "Marco, this is beyond protocol." Her voice shook. I nodded, though my own tremor was fierce. "I know. But we can't let that thing slip into the city." We followed the hedgerow toward the apostolic palace. The windows were dark, curtains drawn. In the hush, we heard another sound, the soft creak of leather. I spun. Flashlight beam caught the pale curve of a robed sleeve disappearing around a corner. We chased, heart slamming. Around the corner, a service door stood ajar. Beyond, a storage corridor piled with crates of liturgical vestments and relic containers. The figure's footprints led across the dusty floor. I crouched, examining them, barefoot, twisted toes, imprint of an otherworldly foot. I radioed Elena. "Look at this." She knelt beside me, not human. Her whisper trembled. I traced the print with my finger. The dust felt alive, as if it recoiled. A distant clang echoed, metal on stone, coming from deep within the palace. We advanced, the corridor dog-legged into darkness. Candle sconces ignited as we passed, revealing walls draped in ancient tapestries. Angels woven in gold threads stared down, wings outstretched. My flashlight flickered. For a heartbeat, I saw the figure standing at the far end, hood lowered, face pale and smooth as marble. Then gone. At the end of the hall, double doors led into the curator's office. The nameplate read, "Archivist, authorized personnel only." The doors were open. Inside, overturned chairs, scrolls strewn across the mosaic floor. A cabinet lay empty, its reliquaries missing. On the desk, a smear of dark fluid led to an open safe in the wall. The codex we'd seen in the vault should have been secured here. Now, it was gone. My radio crackled, static, then a faint voice. "VCP?" I lunged for the handset. "Dispatch, this is DeSantis. Archive breach confirmed. Missing codex. Need immediate." The line died. Elena's face was pale. "They know we're here." I clenched my jaw. "We know too much." I scanned the room. Among the scattered scrolls lay a single intact parchment, a sketch of the cracked altar symbol drawn in red ink. Beneath it, a note in shaky Latin. "They come for the mind." A low rumble shook the floor. The torch sconces guttered. We backed toward the door. Then the shutters on the windows slammed inward, as if struck by an unseen hand. Glass shards tinkled. The room plunged into shadow. "Go!" I shouted. We dashed out, vaulting over debris. Behind us, the office door slammed shut with a deafening boom. I glanced back. The broken symbol on the desk glowed faintly, as if alive. We burst into the open air of St. Peter's Square. The night was still. The codex was gone. The chanting had fallen silent. Only the whisper remained, echoing in my skull. "Guard the mind." Helena leaned against a fountain rim, trembling. I pulled her close. "We alert to the cardinal's office," I said. "We seal every wing." She nodded, tears shining. "But what about him?" I followed her gaze to the Swiss Guard tower. At the top window, a pale shape stared back. No face, only hooded darkness. It raised a hand in silent benediction, and then it vanished. Silence reclaimed the night. But I know it waits. Watching. We sprinted across the travertine of St. Peter's Square toward the Apostolic Palace, our footsteps swallowed by the cavernous hush. The basilica's dome loomed overhead, inscrutable in moonlight. Every instinct screamed that we were far from safe. I'm Officer Marco DeSantis, and I still feel the tremor in my bones from what came next. The palace's west wing doors stood ajar, black voids framed by sculpted columns. I thumbed my flashlight on and nudged Elena forward. The corridor beyond was narrow, ceiling low, walls draped in medieval tapestries so dark they absorbed the light. Each step echoed like a gunshot. My radio lay dead in my pocket. Backup would not come. Halfway down the hall, we passed a shattered lantern. Its melted wax pooled on the marble floor, mingled with dark fluid. I forced myself to look away. "They're hunting the codex," I whispered. Elena's nod was a quake in the silence. At the corridor's end, a heavy oak door barred our path, iron-bound, ancient. It bore the papal seal reversed, the same twisted keys and tiara from the altar crack. The wood was scorched around the edges. I pressed my palm to the door. It was warm, unnaturally so. I exchanged a look with Elena. "On 3, I said. We shoved. The door groaned open, revealing a grand gallery lined with relics. Chalices, censers, jeweled crosses, 500 years of church history. All were gone. Empty pedestals stood like broken teeth. A single object remained, the codex pedestal, now bare. The protective glass case lay shattered. I stepped forward, heart hammering. Across the polished floor, footprints led toward an archway draped in velvet. I followed, Elena close behind. The air here smelled of incense and decay. Beyond the arch lay the secret archives, a vast hall of iron racks and locked chests. My flashlight beam danced across the spines of forbidden tomes. The vault door at the far end was open, swinging. A low chanting began again, soft, sorrowful, pulling at the edges of my mind. I blinked, shaken. The vault's interior was dark, but at its center the codex hovered above a stone plinth, pages turning as if blown by an unseen wind. The Latin script glowed red. He who reads becomes stone. I swallowed. This was no mere book. It was a trap. Elena gasped. I grabbed her arm. "We can't let them." A figure stepped from the shadows. Not the white-robed watcher, but a man in Vatican garb. Monsignor Luciani, head archivist. His eyes were hollow, pupils dilated. He held a brass censer, swinging it. Smoke curled in serpentine tendrils. "You should not have come," he intoned, voice flat. I raised my weapon. "Monsignor, step away from the codex." He smiled. "A brittle, broken thing. The church has secrets worth more than souls, officer." He swung the censer. The smoke formed shapes, faces in torment. I felt them brush my mind. Pain lanced behind my eyes. Elena cried out. I staggered, pressing a hand to my temple. The walls swayed. I realized with a jolt, Luciani was chanting in archaic Latin, calling on powers long exiled. The codex responded. Its pages flipped faster, the glow intensifying, sending pulsed waves through the hall. I forced a step forward. "Stop this!" My voice cracked. The Monsignor's head snapped toward me. "You cannot stop what has already begun." He approached the plinth. The codex snapped shut. The chanting ceased. Silence slammed back like a guillotine. Then the codex fell open on a new page, blank, bone white. Luciani placed a trembling finger on it. The page sank in as if swallowing him. His body stilled, stone veins crept across his robes. He looked at me, eyes wide with terror, then solidified into a statue mid-step. Elena screamed. I lunged, ripping at the hem of his robe, but the stone was cold, immovable. The codex's page curled, revealing a new line. One mind bound, the path opens. A rumble shook the racks. Books slid from shelves, locked chests burst open. From each spilled artifacts, rosaries, reliquaries, now crawling with shadowy figures, writhing shapes half form, half darkness. They spilled into the hall, drifting toward me, whispering. I fired my flashlight into them. The beams passed through, stirring the shadows into angry swirls. "Elena, the door!" I yelled. We dashed back toward the vault entrance, shadows in pursuit. The chant resumed, this time from all around, rising in a deafening crescendo. We reached the oak door. I shoved it, locked. The reversed papal seal glowed on its surface. "Help me move this," I panted, nodding at a fallen relic case. We heaved it against the door. The shadows slammed into the barrier, rattling the wood. I pressed my back to it, drawing breath. Elena's hand found mine. "Marco, what now?" I forced my racing heart to slow. "We need to seal the vault, seal the archives." Behind us, the chanting warped, words merging into one command, open. The relic case began to slide. I threw myself against it. In that moment, I saw the Codex's final purpose, to breach the barrier between minds and stone, to turn protectors into prisoners. And I knew what we had to do. "On three," I whispered. "1, 2, 3. We shoved with everything we had. The case ground against the seal. The door creaked, then slammed shut. The shaking stopped. The chanting died. Silence. I collapsed against the cold marble. Elena knelt beside me, trembling. "Is it over?" she whispered. I closed my eyes. The vault door stood firm. The archives were sealed. But in my mind, the last echo remained. "Beware the Watchers of Stone." I rose, voice hollow. We notify the Cardinal, then we pray. We retraced our steps, leaving the Monsignor's statue behind, a caution in cold stone. The gardens lay silent, the moon untroubled. Yet I know the Watcher waits, beyond seal and door, for the next curious soul. The dawn light seeped into the Vatican gardens like a tentative promise. But we didn't wait for mercy. Elena and I crept along the hedged walk, feet barely making a sound on the dew-glazed stone. Every shadow between the sculpted yews seemed to twitch with unseen life. I kept my flashlight off, trusting the pale gray of pre-sunrise to guide us. My sidearm felt weightless at my hip. Insufficient, I knew, but better than nothing. Behind the Apostolic Palace, the service entrance to the archives stood sealed with fresh wax. The Cardinal's seal had been affixed hours ago. Red ribbon crossed the door in an X. Yet I knew that ribbon could be peeled away. The thing in the vault had power over stone, over mind. We approached the seal. It was cracked, spiderweb lines radiating from the center. Someone, or something, had tested it again. "Elena," I whispered. She shivered. Her breath rose in a small cloud. "We have to reinforce it." She nodded, drawing a coil of security cable from her pack. I produced the magnetic lockbox we'd carried for evidence collection. Together, we wrapped the door frame, clamping the box over the wax seal. If the door moved, the box alarm would shatter silence. I tapped the cable's sensor, green light. "Done." My voice sounded brittle. Elena exhaled. "That should hold, at least until reinforcements arrive." I glanced at my watch, 5:47 a.m. In less than 2 hours, daylight patrols would resume. We turned to leave, only to find the hedges parted by a slender figure in white robes. The hood was drawn back now, revealing the archivist's gaunt profile. Monsignor Luciani, though no longer stone. His skin was waxen, eyes sunken, mouth moving in silent prayer. He held the codex aloft, pages fluttering though no wind stirred. "Elena," I hissed. She froze. The Monsignor's lips moved. A prayer, or a curse. The codex's glow pulsed in time with his heartbeat. I raised my flashlight. Light struck the pages. New text scrawled in bloody ink. "The seal is weak." Luciani's head snapped toward us. His mouth opened in a silent scream. Then he dissolved into motes of dust that drifted upward like funeral ashes. The codex tumbled from his fingers, landing open on the grass. The pages turned, stopping on a diagram, the layout of the entire archive complex, with corridors we hadn't known existed. Secret rooms beneath St. Peter's, hidden chapels, crypts unlisted on any map. My blood ran cold. "He drew this from memory," I whispered. "They learned our defenses." Elena crouched, tracing a finger over one hidden vault marked in red. "We have to seal all these." I nodded. "But we need help." I radioed dispatch, static, then at last, "VCP base, come in." Relief cracked my voice. "Backup en route. We've got multiple breaches. Archive Wing B seal compromised, secret vaults exposed, codex recovered. Need EOD and gendarmerie. Understood, came the reply. ETA 10 minutes. 10 minutes, a lifetime. We gathered the codex carefully, slipping it into an evidence bag. The leather was warm, almost living. The Latin phrase shimmered on the cover. Custodite mentem. Guard the mind. We retraced our path through the gardens, moving as ghosts beneath statues of saints. Every fountain we passed seemed to murmur. At the Neptune pool, ripples shaped like faces formed on the surface, then vanished. I closed my eyes, shook my head. Too much coffee, I muttered. Elena didn't reply. Her gaze was fixed on the far hedge, where shadows pooled unnaturally. A low rumble ran through the ground. I glanced down. The cobblestones vibrated. The hedges rustled, though no breeze blew. From between the yews, dozens of pale figures emerged, robes white as bone, faces blank voids. They drifted toward us, arms outstretched. "Elena, run!" I dropped the codex bag and fired my flashlight into the approaching shapes. The beams passed through them, illuminating drifting particles like ash. They closed in, whispering in hollow voices, "Custodite, mentem." We fled toward the palace entrance. The figures glided behind, silent feet on stone. My heart thundered. The security cable alarm hadn't yet sounded. I slammed the door open and dove inside, Elena on my heels. I latched the door. The magnetic box shrieked. The robes pressed against the bronze, hissing like steam. I activated the emergency lockdown. Steel shutters slid over the windows. Blast doors groaned down the corridor. The whispering ceased. Silence reclaimed the hall, but the copper tang of fear lingered. Elena panted. They can't get in." I shook as adrenaline faded. For now, I retrieved the codex bag. "We need to move this somewhere safe." She nodded. "The Swiss Guard Armory? It's the only secure vault outside church control." I considered it. The armory's reinforced chambers were designed for weapons, not manuscripts, but stone can't bind steel. "Let's go." We navigated back through service corridors, bypassing the shattered lanterns and scorched doors. At the armory, Captain Rinaldi of the Swiss Guard met us, gauntlet-clad guards behind him. His eyebrow rose at the evidence bag. "What have you got?" I unzipped it, revealing the codex. The glow was faint now. "Something that wants to turn us into statues." He frowned. "We'll lock it in the outer vault. No access without 3 keys. And the Cardinal's code." He tapped a panel. The door slid open onto a steel-lined room. Inside lay racks of halberds and chalices, now joined by the codex on a pedestal of reinforced alloy. As the door sealed, I felt weight lift from my shoulders and immediately drop. The codex's glow pulsed once, then died. On its cover, new words. Phase 1 complete. Captain Rinaldi paled. Phase 1, I swallowed. We have 4 more phases. 4 more sections of the codex to recover, and 4 more seals to hold. Behind us, the armory's lights flickered. A single halberd tipped from its rack, clattering to the floor. I drew my weapon reflexively. Elena swallowed. I stepped forward, voice steady, though my blood ran ice. "Gear up, we're not done yet." In the hush, the codex's binding clicked as if approving. And I realized the Vatican's true defense wasn't stone walls or guards. It was us, our minds. Because only the mind can stand between the living and the watchers of stone. The steel blast doors of the Swiss Guard Armory sealed with a pneumatic hiss behind us, plunging the corridor into tense half-light. The codex lay on its alloy pedestal, inert now, but I could feel its weight in the air, a promise of storm yet to come. Elena's boots clicked on the grated floor as she moved to inspect the reinforcement locks. Captain Rinaldi stood guard, halberd at the ready, eyes flicking between us and the sealed vault. I swallowed the lump in my throat and spoke softly. We've held Phase 1. But the Codex's note, Phase 1 complete, means there are 4 more sections hidden in the Vatican's depths. My words echoed in the narrow chamber. Elena's flashlight beam trembled over the steel walls. Rinaldi's jaw clenched. Then we prepare for Phase 2, he said. A distant rumble vibrated through the armory racks. The halberd that lay on the floor skittered away, as if pushed by an unseen hand. Elena stiffened, hand on her sidearm. I pressed a finger to my lips. The armory lights flickered. Shadows leapt like living creatures. For a moment, the Codex's glow flared inside the sealed vault, visible through the armored glass. Then it winked out. We didn't wait. Rinaldi keyed his guard code and opened the outer door a crack, peering into the service corridor beyond. "All clear for now," he whispered. The corridor's emergency lights hummed. We stepped out, forming a tight line. Rinaldi front, Elena and I flanking. Codex secured in an evidence crate strapped to my back. Every footstep resonated through the palace's underbelly. We passed the frescoed walls where angels wept shadow, the shattered lantern outside Archive Wing B, the scorched reversed seal on the West Wing door. Each landmark felt charged, as if marking stages of a ritual we'd only begun to fathom. Elena consulted her notebook. Ancient vault maps she'd copied from Luciani's sketch. "Next section located beneath St. Peter's tomb," she murmured. "A hidden crypt under the high altar. It's been sealed since the 1600s. I shivered. Beneath the tomb lay the bones of popes and something darker. "We move fast," I said. "We can't let the Watchers regroup." We descended a narrow spiral staircase carved from travertine. The air grew colder, damper, carrying whispers of incense and death. My flashlight caught niches carved into the walls, empty reliquaries, broken seals, a single human skull bleached white. Elena swallowed. "A warning," she said. At the base, an iron door barred our path. It bore the same twisted papal seal, 3 interlaced keys forming a triangle. I produced the chain and lock device and secured it around the handle. 3 seals held: the ritual seal, our evidence seal, and this final security seal. The door shuddered, then held firm. Beyond lay the crypt, vaulted stone ceiling encrusted with gold leaf, pillars carved into angels whose faces had been worn away. The mosaic floor depicted the stoning of St. Stephen, drops of red tesserae still glinting like fresh blood. Down the center, a narrow trench led to a sarcophagus of black marble. Its lid was etched with an archaic inscription: "He who sleeps here shall guard the sleepers." Elena crouched at the trench's edge, tracing a series of scratch marks leading under the sarcophagus. I knelt beside her, heart hammering. The trench walls were lined with small alcoves, empty niches once housing relics. Now each niche held only darkness. I pressed my hand against the marble lid, cold, smooth, unyielding. A soft, rhythmic tapping sounded from beneath. I drew my sidearm. Elena shone her light into the trench. Tiny cracks had formed along the marble seams. The sarcophagus trembled. "It's waking," she whispered. I radioed Rinaldi. "Stand by." We pried at the lid with crowbars. The stone resisted, then gave with a groan that vibrated through my bones. A plume of dust rose, carrying the scent of earth and rot. Inside lay a skeleton draped in papal vestments, tapestry of gold and crimson, but its skull bore the same twisted seal burned into the altar above. Elena's breath caught. They buried him for a reason. I nodded and shone my light along the skeleton's outstretched hand. Clutched in bony fingers was a chipped bone dagger, its blade carved with unreadable runes. As I touched it, a pulse of cold shot up my arm. A whisper crawled in my mind. "Release me!" I jerked back. The lid slammed forward with invisible force, sending us reeling. The trench walls rumbled. Dust cascaded from the ceiling. We staggered back as the sarcophagus lid slid shut, sealing itself once more. The 3 seals strained, then held. The tapping ceased. Silence crashed in. "Elena, we got the dagger," I panted, holding up the bone blade. Phase 2 item. Her eyes were wide. "We need to catalog it, then decide if we destroy it or lock it away." I glanced at the skull's sealed visage. Destroying might break the seal entirely. Rinaldi's voice crackled over the radio. "Intrusion detected at Archive Wing C." Elena cursed. "They're hitting multiple sites simultaneously." I took a deep breath. We split up. Rinaldi, secure the dagger and codex in the armory vault. Elena and I go to Wing C, find Section 3. He nodded, ushering the dagger and the evidence crate back up the stair. Helena and I retraced our path through the crypt's antechamber. The angels above seemed to lean closer, wings extended. Guardians or watchers. We couldn't tell which. The corridor beyond lay dark, the way lit only by our flashlights. Archive Wing C door stood open. Inside, a library of theological treatises lay in chaos. Books strewn, embers smoldering in overturned lamps. On a lectern, a second codex section pulsed with pale blue light. A vellum parchment illustrated with a sigil of entwined vines and skulls. I stepped forward. The air crackled. The sigil's glow intensified as I reached out. Elena grabbed my arm. "Wait, trap!" But it was too late. My fingers brushed the page. Pain exploded behind my eyes. Visions flooded me. Rows of statues weeping stone tears. Monks chanting in subterranean vaults. My own reflection turning to marble. I collapsed, convulsing. Elena dropped to her knees, gripping my shoulders. "Marco, snap out of it!" She shook me. The sigil's light flickered. I clawed at my temples, fighting the vision. "Guard! Mind!" I gasped. Elena's drawing from the codex echoing in my head. She slapped my face. I blinked, breaking the trance. The codex section lay still. Elena exhaled, voice trembling. "It's like it tried to rewrite your thoughts." I nodded, swallowing. "We bag it, now." She snapped on gloves and sealed the parchment in an evidence pouch. The blue glow faded. "Wing C sealed?" I radioed. Static, then Rinaldi. "Confirmed. All seals holding, for now." Relief washed through me, but the weight of what we'd accomplished pressed down heavier. 2 phases secured, 3 to go, and each one more dangerous than the last. Elena helped me to my feet. "We should rest." I shook my head. "No time. We plan Phase 3. Under the Basilica's foundations, beneath the confessionals." Her eyes widened. "That's active. Pilgrims tomorrow." I clenched my jaw. "We go at dawn, quietly." We slipped from the wing, leaving the lamp's embers glowing in the silent stacks. The corridor's tapestries fluttered in an unseen draft. A distant chant, a single voice, rose and fell. I pressed a hand to my chest. "They're waking." Elena swallowed. Then we moved faster. Outside, the first bird song trembled through the gardens. The Vatican awoke, unaware of the war beneath its feet. I looked back at the sealed doors, the inverted seals glinting in dawn's light. The corridor beneath the confessionals was colder than any place I'd ever known. An ice that seeped into my bones, carrying with it the faint echo of whispered sins. Helena and I moved in single file, boots muffled by the thick layer of dust on the flagstones. 20 minutes ago, we'd sealed Wing C, secured the bone dagger in second codex section, and radioed Captain Rinaldi to reinforce the armory vault. Now, every torch along these hidden passages flickered as though struggling against some unseen wind. I swallowed, tasting copper. "Stay close," I murmured. Elena's breathing was shallow but steady, hard-earned calm after the chaos. Ahead, the confessional's marble floor above creaked occasionally, as if pilgrims pacing overhead were unaware of the war beneath their prayers. We passed a small alcove where dozens of broken rosaries lay tangled in spider webs. I paused. One bead glowed faintly before dimming. A trick of light or something watching. At the far end, a granite slab bore an inscription in archaic Latin, Hic ias et vigilantia et peccata. Here lie vigilance and sins. I traced the letters with my gloved finger. The slab shifted under my touch, revealing a narrow gap. Elena produced a slim crowbar. With a protest of grinding stone, the slab slid aside to expose a vertical shaft. A ladder of iron rungs descended into blackness. "Elena, last chance to turn back," I said. She met my gaze, eyes resolute. "We finish this." Together we climbed down. The shaft walls were slick with moisture. Every rung echoed a hollow clank. By the time we reached the bottom, our knees trembled. A final rung deposited us into a vast subterranean chamber. My flashlight illuminated frescoed domes overhead, scenes of Judgment Day, angels weighing souls. The pillars were carved into penitence, faces twisted in agony. Long benches of stone lined the walls, stained dark with unidentifiable slickness. In the center lay a circular pit, rimmed by carved gargoyles, their jaws open in silent screams. At its base, an iron grate covered a yawning depression. From beyond that grate came a low, rhythmic thrum, like a heartbeat in the earth. "Elena, listen." The sound resonated in my chest. I knelt beside the grate, prying at the iron bars. Beneath, pale shapes writhed in darkness. Hands, robed figures, stone faces emerging then receding. The second codex section sigil had predicted this. Beneath false confession, the watchers awaken. I pressed my ear to the grate. The whispers were urgent now, pleading, "Custodite mentem, open." Elena tapped her radio. "DeSantis, intrusion at subterranean vault. Seal compromised. Static." Rinaldi's voice, "Hold tight. Backup 5 minutes out." I rose, heart hammering. 5 minutes felt like an eternity when stone wanted to claim your mind. I shone my light around. The frescoed dome overhead depicted St. Michael casting down rebel angels. Swords raised, wings aflame. I wondered, could divine art guard us now? We set to work. Elena affixed ritual chalk symbols around the pit, crosses and arrows pointing outward. I secured the iron grate with cable and padlock. 3 seals again. The ancient seal of penance, our makeshift evidence seal, the physical lock. The pit shuddered. Dust rained from the ceiling. A guttural sigh echoed from below. "Elena, step back." I pressed the latch. The grate held. The whispering ebbed. For a moment, silence reigned, thick and expectant. Then the grate vibrated violently. The padlock bent. Elena and I braced ourselves, prying against the bars. The whisper surged into a roar. "Guard the mind! Guard the mind!" We shoved with everything we had. The bars groaned, then snapped back into place. The padlock clicked. The grate stilled. The chamber fell quiet, save for our ragged breaths. Elena sank to a bench, hand on her knee. That was close. I nodded, wiping sweat and dust from my brow. Phase 3 secured. She looked up, worry in her eyes. But the watchers, they're growing bolder. I swallowed. They tested that seal. They know our patterns. Phase 4 could be anywhere. I tapped the wall. These confessionals, once sacred, they're conduits now. We climbed back to the corridor, pausing only when distant alarms began to wail. Captain Rinaldi's reinforcements moving through the palace. We ducked into a small maintenance closet to gather ourselves. I flexed my fingers, feeling their tremor. Elena checked the codex pouch. The second section's vellum shimmered under the fabric. "Only 2 to go," I said. Elena closed her eyes. "Where are sections 4 and 5 hidden?" I consulted the archivist's map. One beneath the Swiss Guard barracks, one within the ancient cisterns under the gardens. Both were active zones, soldiers, staff, the faithful. Retrieving them without mass panic would be a miracle. We split up, I decided. You and Rinaldi take the barracks. I'll go to the cisterns. Elena shook her head. "Not alone." I touched her shoulder. "I need to do this solo. You lead the team." She hesitated, then nodded. "Be careful." I stepped into the corridor as the reinforcements arrived. Swiss guards, gendarmerie, evidence technicians. I slipped away, hugging the shadows, heading back through the grand gallery. The morning sun had climbed. Tourists now gathered at the basilica entrance, oblivious. I felt like a traitor to the living, moving beneath their feet. At the barracks wing, Elena and Rinaldi coordinated quietly, sealing doors and sweeping hallways. Sparks flew when Rinaldi affixed the ritual seal to an armory door. The codex's presence pulsed through the steel. Elena whispered a prayer in Latin, her voice steady. Rinaldi snapped the chain lock in place. Section 4 secured. Meanwhile, I descended into the cisterns, a labyrinth of arches dripping with water. My flashlight beam danced across algae-slick walls. The water pooled ankle-deep. Every splash echoed. Ahead, I saw the carved symbol, a triangle of keys halfway submerged. I pressed my palm to the stone, the mark of the final codex section. I waded forward, heart hammering. The water grew colder. My boots squelched. The symbol glowed faintly. I knelt and pried loose a stone slab. Beneath lay a watertight reliquary, a metal cylinder etched with runes. I lifted it free, heavy, humming with energy. The fourth section, a cylinder containing distilled ritual essence. I slipped it into my pack. The water around me rippled, though no breeze stirred. Ripples formed shapes, hooded figures, featureless faces staring. I backed away, breathing hard. The reliquary's glow pulsed, 1, 2, 3 times, then faded. I replaced the slab. The cistern rumbled, water sloshed. I sprinted back up the stairs. By midday, all 4 sections lay sealed. Codex Section 1 in the Armory Vault, Section 2 in Archive Wing C safe, Section 3 under the confessionals, Section 4 in a reinforced evidence locker. Elena coordinated each seal's integrity. We met at the Swiss Guard Tower as the sun sank, painting St. Peter's facade gold. Captain Rinaldi approached, fatigue etched on his face. "One left," he said quietly. I nodded. The final section, the heart of the codex, lies beneath the obelisk in the piazza, the ancient Egyptian monolith at the plaza's center. Public, unguarded by us at night. Elena swallowed. "We can't risk civilians." I looked at the gathering dusk crowd, pilgrims, tourists, priests, each mind a beacon to the watchers. "We lure them away," I said. "Create a credible threat, fire alarm, gas leak drill, evacuate, then retrieve." She nodded. "We'll need gendarmerie cooperation." I tapped my radio. Phase 5, tonight at 0200. Evac, retrieve, seal beneath obelisk crypt. Rinaldi clicked his affirmation. Night fell. Street lamps flickered on. A false alarm, smoke machines in subways, discreet announcements in Italian, emptied the square within 20 minutes. The last tourist vanished. leaving moonlit travertine in the obelisk's towering shadow. Helena and I approached the obelisk's base. The granite plinth bore a hidden hatch, revealed only by precise alignment of moonlight and shadow. We worked in silence. Helena operating the hatch lock, me scanning for watchers. The hatch groaned open onto a spiraling descent. Inside lay a small vault carved into the obelisk's foundation. In its center, the final codex section floated within a crystal sphere, the heart of custody. Its light was pure white, pulsing like a living heartbeat. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed danger. "Elena," I whispered. She shone her light. One seal left. I slid the sphere into a cushioned case. The vault shuddered. The obelisk above groaned, as if straining on ancient hinges. I slammed the hatch shut. Immediately, the ground trembled. Stone around the obelisk cracked, hairline fractures spreading outward. We bolted up the stairs as dust rained down. The square's lamps flickered. A hollow rumble echoed from beneath. The watchers, release imminent. Elena fumbled with the hatch's seal kit. Chain, cable, padlock, 3 seals. The ground shook again. We locked the hatch. The obelisk stilled. Silence fell. The moon carved silver across the empty piazza. The sphere's case hummed softly against my chest. "It's done," I breathed. Helena exhaled, tears glistening. 5 phases, 5 seals. We rose into the square. Dawn would find an empty plaza and no sign of our midnight work. We placed the sphere case into a waiting armored van alongside the other sealed sections. Captain Rinaldi acknowledged the cargo with solemn respect. "May it never see the light of day." I nodded. "And may our minds hold." Now, as I speak into this report, my final testimony, I feel the weight of every seal in my bones. The codex lies fractured but contained, buried in vaults beneath the Vatican, far from curious eyes. Yet I know the watchers remain, patient. They measure time in centuries. They wait for cracks, in stone, in protocol, in human resolve. Sometimes, late at night, I glimpse their shapes in the shadow of the obelisk, their featureless faces pressing against the marble. I wake with the echo of chanting in my ears. "Guard the mind," I whisper, touching the scar on my temple. I check my watch, 002. The hush around St. Peter's Basilica presses in on me like a physical weight. The marble steps beneath my boots gleam silver in the pale light of the lone lamp perched atop the Swiss Guard tower. I breathe out, fog billowing in the chill, and lean my shoulder against the carved stone balustrade, listening for anything amiss. My name is Luca Moretti, Vatican City Police Badge number VCP317. 6 years I've walked these corridors, and tonight feels different. I step off the steps and into the Vatican gardens, my flashlight beam slicing through the darkness. The clipped hedges stand like silent sentinels, their shadows long and skeletal. Every statue, saints, angels, martyrs, wears a mask of stone calm, their eyes frozen in prayer. But I know how quickly silence can lie. My radio crackles. "Unit Moretti, any sign of movement near the Apostolic Palace West Wing?" It's Captain Rinaldi. His voice is steady. He's heard my reports before, but I detect a flicker of concern. "Negative, Captain. All clear so far," I reply. I force my tone casual. Protocol says I should wait for backup before entering restricted corridors after hours. But the report was specific. Scraping noises, like metal on stone, echoing from inside the palace walls. If someone's trespassing among centuries of priceless manuscripts, I can't just wait. I follow the cobblestone path toward the palace's rear entrance. Every footstep clacks against centuries-worn stones. I'm hyper-aware of the soft click of my holster, the faint hum of my radio, the way my breath catches when the hedges rustle, though there's no breeze. At the heavy oak door, I pause. The medieval iron studs gleam where my flashlight catches them. I rap the butt of my flashlight against the wood. Vatican police, identify yourself. Silence. I wait 10 heartbeats. The scraping starts again, low, deliberate, from somewhere deeper inside. I hesitate. Then I thumb the bolt release and shove. The door groans open. Inside, the corridor is lit by votive candles in wrought iron sconces. Their flames flicker, casting dancing shadows across frescoed walls and mosaic floors. The air is cool, smelling of old wax and damp stone. Each breath tastes faintly of incense long burned away. I step in, door clicking shut behind me. I call through the gloom, "If anyone's here, show yourself. You're trespassing on holy ground." My voice echoes. The corridor stretches ahead, arched ceilings fading into darkness. To my right, a side door marked Archivio Segreto stands slightly ajar. I didn't open that. Official policy keeps it locked tight. My pulse jumps. I slip my pistol from its holster, checking the magazine. Standard issue, 9mm, reliable. I don't like having to draw it here, but protocol demands caution. I push the archive door gently. It swings open onto a room of silent shelves, heavy tomes bound in cracked leather. A single manuscript lies on a reading desk, its pages splayed. The Latin title reads Liber Custodii, the Book of Guardians. I step closer. The page under the lamp is stained dark, as if someone pressed a hand there, fresh. My glove comes away smeared with something sticky. A soft shuffle behind me. I whirl, flashlight beam slicing the dark, but see only empty air. The candles gutter. Flame dips as though a breeze passed, though the chamber is sealed. I swallow. My radio sputters. "Unit Moretti?" Captain Rinaldi again. "Report." "I found a manuscript, stains on the page," I say. "Someone's been here." My voice sounds too loud. I clear my throat. "I'm investigating." "Backup is 5 minutes out," Rinaldi says. "Hold position." I nod, though he can't see. I tuck the pistol back and close the door quietly, sealing the archive. The corridor beyond seems darker now. I press on. 10 meters ahead, I come to a fork. Left leads toward the main gallery. Right veers into the old servants' passage, long disused. The scraping came from that direction. I turn right. The stones underfoot narrow, the ceiling lowers. My flashlight beam trembles as I advance. Halfway down, I nearly step on something. I crouch. It's a metal ring. An old key ring, dozens of tarnished skeleton keys dangling. They tinkle when I touch them. This ring shouldn't be here. Official keys never leave the Swiss Guard quartermaster. My hand hovers. I slip the ring into my pocket. Evidence. I stand. At the end of the passage is a heavy door, reinforced with iron bands. I rest my palm on it. It's cold. The wood grain is rough beneath my glove. I try the handle. It's unlocked. I glance back the way I came. No lights, no movement. I push through. The room beyond is vast. Vaulted ceiling disappearing into darkness. Rows of empty display cases. Shards of broken glass on the floor. It's the old reliquary hall, decommissioned decades ago, but its secrets are rumored. Candle stubs litter the dust. Someone held vigil here. Ahead, something glints on the floor. I crouch, another manuscript, this one a single page. A hand-drawn illustration of a hooded figure, face in shadow, surrounded by Latin. Secutus custodit. He who follows guards. My heart pounds. A whisper drifts through the hall, soft as silk. Custodia muta. I freeze. The words die on my lips. Then the candles flare to life. dozens of them, though no match was lit. The flickering orange glow reveals a shape at the far end. A robed figure, hood low, standing perfectly still. I click my flashlight on it. The beam trembles. The figure's head tilts. No face, only darkness within the hood. I draw my pistol. "Vatican police, step away." Silence, but for the dripping of water somewhere to my left. I take a step forward. The figure glides backward, silent. Candle flames stretch, elongate its shadow into monstrous limbs across the walls. My radio bursts. "Unit Moretti, what's your status?" I nearly jolt. I encountered an intruder, robed, no response. My voice quavers. "Hold your ground, backup is moments away." I advance again, heart hammering. Each breath echoes. The figure retreats toward an archway I've never seen on any map. Beyond lies a spiral staircase descending into darkness. The whisper comes again. "Follow." My skin crawls. I hesitate. Training screams no. Curiosity screams yes. I radio Rinaldi. "There's a staircase, secret. Someone's using it. I'm descending." He warns me not to, but his words fade in the static. I take the first step. The stone is slick with moisture. My flashlight beam darts across ancient carvings, chained angels, weeping faces, twisted serpents. The air grows colder. I can see my breath. 2, 3, 10 steps down. The corridor opens into a circular chamber. In its center, a shallow pool of water reflects the single bulb of my torch. Ripples spread, though I see no disturbance. The robed figure stands at the rim. I approach, every nerve alight. My boot hits something solid. A book, Codex 42, leather cracked, lying half submerged. I kneel, slide it out. The cover is inscribed Secretum Dis. I pry it open. The pages are blank, until ink seeps in, forming words. He who reads becomes the guard. A loud click behind me. I spin. The staircase hatch has shut. No way back. My radio dies. Darkness presses in. The figure glides closer. I stand, codex in hand. My pulse is thunder. The water laps at my boots. Candlelight flickers from sconces around the chamber, though I never saw them before. The figure stops 2 paces away. I lift the codex between us. It quivers, pages fluttering though there's no breeze. The figure raises a hand. In its palm, a key, one of the skeleton keys from the ring. It dangles, glinting. I swallow. My training, my faith, my every instinct screams to flee, but the hatch is shut. I step forward, voice steady though my heart races. "What is this place? Who are you?" No answer. The figure tilts its head. Then, in a voice like distant bells, it intones a single word in Latin. "Custos." Guard. It extends the key toward me. My grip tightens on the codex. I realize the offer is choice or curse. I weigh faith against fear. I take a breath. I reach out. And in that moment the chamber goes black. The cold pressed in from all sides as darkness swallowed me. My outstretched hand closed around something smooth and metallic. The key. It hummed faintly, vibrating in my palm as if alive. The hooded figure drifted closer, its presence filling the chamber with an almost musical resonance that thrummed against my bones. My flashlight flickered once, twice, then died, leaving only the pulsing glow from the key itself. I swallowed hard, heart hammering. Every instinct screamed escape, but the hatch overhead remained sealed tight. I was trapped. Behind me, water sloshed softly. Ahead, the figure waited. I forced myself to breathe evenly, to think like an officer. Assess, plan, act. I flicked my wrist, training muscle memory, and drew my backup flashlight. It sparked to life, casting a narrow cone of white light that cut through the gloom. The figure recoiled from that beam as though stung, and the key's glow dimmed. Encouraged, I stepped forward, keeping the light trained on its empty hood. "Who, or what are you?" I called, voice echoing around the circular chamber. My words seemed to amuse it. It tilted its head, the robe's folds whispering against the stone floor. I risked glancing at the codex in my other hand. Its leather cover was damp, flecked with ancient symbols I couldn't decipher. The pages fluttered, revealing blank whiteness, and then lines of ink bled across the paper in real time, forming letters. "You choose." My breath caught. I felt torn between two realities. One, the rational world of law, order, proof. The other, the subterranean crypt of secrets older than the Vatican itself. The key pulsed stronger now, as if urging me. I closed the codex and pressed it to my chest. Then the whispering began, soft, indistinct at first, then rising in urgency. It came from the walls, the water, the key, the figure itself. A chorus of voices speaking Latin, pleading, warning, commanding. "Custodia, custodia, guard, guard." A single word echoed in my mind, custos. The same word the figure had spoken. I realized this chamber, this codex, the key, they were part of a ritual, an ancient duty. The figure wasn't an enemy, it was a sentinel, waiting to pass its charge on to someone worthy. My training warred with my fear. I thought of Captain Rinaldi's voice over the radio, of protocol, of evidence. But I also thought of my oath to protect. Not just people, but the sacred trust of this place. I looked up at the figure's hood. "I accept," I whispered. The moment the word left my lips, the key snapped from my hand and floated toward the figure. It caught the key in a silent gesture, then raised to both arms, and the chamber responded. The sconces flared with blue-white flame. The water stilled. The hatch above clicked and swung open, revealing a shaft of dim light. The figure turned and drifted to the pool's edge. There, the water began to spiral, forming a vortex that revealed a stone stair curling upward. The codex's pages flipped back to the first page, now filled with script, directions, names, warnings. I could read a few words. "Return to light, serve in silence, protect the secret." I stepped toward the staircase. Each footfall rang like a bell. The figure paused at the top step, then vanished into the light. The hatch frame shimmered as though it had never been closed. I climbed, the key still warm in my pocket, though I'd left it behind. When I pushed through the hatch, I was back in the reliquary hall. The candles there were extinguished. The broken glass lay undisturbed. My backup flashlight illuminated the hall's empty expanse. The front door to the servants' passage stood closed. Moments later, the Swiss guard burst in. Captain Rinaldi at their head, guns drawn, faces ashen. "Moretti," he exclaimed, "are you all right?" I slipped the codex into my inner pocket. "I am now," I said quietly, "but I've taken on a responsibility." His eyes flicked to the manuscript's edge. "We secured everything. There was no sign of anything." He swallowed. "Your report?" I nodded. "Written. But the truth goes deeper. Some things aren't for the records." He frowned, but nodded. He knew this place held secrets that protocols couldn't touch. Later, alone in my quarters, I opened the codex by its bedside lamp. The pages detailed hidden passages beneath St. Peter's, guardians appointed across centuries, and rituals to keep darkness at bay. I realized my life had changed. I was now part of that lineage, a silent custodian of Vatican secrets. I never saw the robed figure again. But sometimes, when the basilica is silent and the moonlight strikes the marble just so, I hear a soft footstep behind me, or feel a presence watching from the archways. And I know I am not alone. Each night, as I suit up for patrol, I slip the codex into my jacket and touch the spot where the key once rested. I whisper a promise, to guard, to protect, to remain silent. And I walk into the shadows, ready to answer the call, whatever it may be. I step back into the vault-like reliquary hall, heart still hammering from the subterranean chamber's revelations. The emergency lights overhead hum softly, revealing the shattered glass cases and silent rows of relics. My flashlight's beam trembles as I sweep the room. Every shadow seems to twist into impossible shapes. I close my eyes and take a steadying breath, counting silently, 1, 2, 3. When I open them, I move toward the door of the servants' passage. My boots echo on the marble. The Codex 42 is heavy in my jacket pocket, a constant, pulsing reminder of the pact I've made. I glance up at the Swiss Guard tower lamp visible through the small window high on the wall. At 2:47 a.m. Backup should have swept this wing by now. I step through the narrow door and into the passage. The air here is colder, damp against my skin. Water drips from the ceiling, forming puddles I skirt around. The stone walls are etched with centuries of wear. Marks from trolleys, scuffs from hurried footsteps long ago. I run a hand along the cold surface, feeling the rough grooves. Every instinct warns me to hurry, but I move deliberately, aware that the codex must not be lost or seen. Halfway down the corridor, I pause. A faint scraping, metal on stone, echoes from ahead. My hand goes to my pistol. I flick on the backup flashlight. The beam picks out the same keyring I pocketed earlier, lying on the floor where I left it. Only now the keys are arranged in a perfect circle, as if placed deliberately. I crouch, heart thudding, and examine them. Dozens of antique skeleton keys, each etched with tiny symbols. I dare not touch them again. The corridor splits. Left leads toward the chapel wing. Right returns to the main palace. The chapel wing is off limits without escort, but the scraping came from the left. I pause, then push on. I emerge into the dim corridor outside the Sistine Chapel's service entrance. The famed ceiling frescoes loom above, but here the walls are plain stone. A single red exit sign glows. The scraping is louder now, definite metal on stone, from behind a large service door marked Private, Authorized Personnel Only. I press an ear to the door. Behind it, the rhythmic scrape of a metal cart being pushed across stone flooring, and footsteps, soft, deliberate. I radio in low whisper. Captain, I'm at the service entrance to the Sistine Chapel. I'm hearing movement inside. Static, and then Rinaldi's calm voice. Do not enter. Await my team. I swallow, torn. Protocol is clear. But what if the intruder flees through the chapel itself, risking priceless art and lives? I push the door open a crack and peer in. Inside, the service corridor is lined with wooden storage crates stamped with ecclesiastical seals. A cart sits unattended beside a crate marked Fragile Reliquie. The scraping stops. Silence. My flashlight beam scans left, then right, and lands on a figure in a gray robe, hood fallen back. It's the same shape I saw below, but now I see a pale, angular face. No eyes. Two smooth expanses of skin where eyes should be. Its mouth is a thin line. I step back, heart in my throat. The figure tilts its head and raises one hand, palm outward. In its palm rests the key I held moments ago, a smaller, more ornate version. The figure's voice when it speaks is calm, almost sorrowful. The path diverges. I steady my pistol. This corridor's restricted. Identify yourself. It sighs, a sound like wind through dead leaves. I am neither friend nor foe. I am the watcher between worlds. I swallow. What are you doing here? It steps closer. The ornate key glints in the flashlight beam. You carry the burden. The codex bonds you. The secrets must pass. My jaw tightens. I don't know what that means. The balance falters, it says. Vaults are opening. Shadows stir. At that moment, the service door behind me slams shut. I spin, bolt and handle rattling. The corridor's exit is gone. Only blank stone. My radio dies. I realize I'm trapped with this thing. My training fights panic. I force myself to inhale slowly. What do you want from me? The robed watcher turns, gliding down the corridor toward the chapel's great doors. I follow, each step echoing. As we approach the sealed chapel doors, the watcher holds up the ornate key. It fits into the chapel's side lock, an old mechanism no guard has used in decades. With a click, the doors swing open inward, revealing the hushed grandeur of Michelangelo's masterpiece. The watcher pauses at the threshold, then looks back. Decide, protect the light, or unlock the darkness. I swallow, mind racing. The codex pulses in my pocket. I step forward into the sacred hall. But as I cross the threshold, the watcher vanishes, and the doors crash shut behind me. The grand space is empty. No guards, no tourists, just the silent frescoes and my own breath. The ornate key lies at my feet. I kneel, pick it up, and press it into my palm. Above me, the Last Judgment's figures seem to shift in the torchlight. I feel their eyes upon me. I know the choice. Turn the key in the chapel's lock and unleash whatever lies beyond, or hide it, and bear the burden alone. My hand trembles over the key's bow. The air grows cold. Candle sconces ignite one by one along the walls, though no flame was struck. The frescoed prophets loom. The moment stretches, and then I hear footsteps in the gallery behind me. Someone, or something, approaches. My heart slams. I look down at the key, then back at the chapel doors. I raise my hand and hesitate. My lungs burn as I stand in the hushed grandeur of the Sistine Chapel. The ornate key heavy and cold in my palm. Candle sconces flare along the walls, though no match was struck. Their flames dancing across Michelangelo's frescoes and casting impossibly long shadows. The air feels charged, as if the centuries of prayer and art have condensed into a living presence that presses in on me from every side. I swallow hard, my throat dry. Somewhere behind the sealed doors, footsteps approach, slow, measured, echoing across stone floors. I press my back against the cool marble of a pilaster, heart hammering. The key's ornate bit seems to pulse in time with my pulse. My other hand hovers over my service pistol, though I'm not sure I dare draw it in a sacred hall. Every instinct screams danger and duty. I force myself to breathe evenly. The footsteps grow louder, then stop at the threshold. I catch the faintest scrape as fabric brushes stone. I flick on my flashlight, sweeping the beam across the chapel. The pews sit empty. The great doors loom behind me, carved wood framed by frescoed prophets. Ahead, beneath the Last Judgment, the high altar stands bathed in flickering light. "Officer Moretti," a calm voice intones from the shadows. I whirl. Standing between two carved columns is the robed figure. No hood now, revealing that pale, featureless face. Where eyes should be, there is only smooth alabaster. Its lips part in a semblance of a smile. "You hesitate," it says, voice echoing as if in a cavern. "Why?" I swallow. "Because My voice falters. What can I say? That logic died the moment I saw it? That I accepted a burden no manual prepared me for? I swallow again. Because this is holy ground. The figure glides closer. Candlelight gleams off its gray robe. And yet you hold the key. It extends a hand, palm up. In its palm rests the smaller, ornate key. Mine is larger, simpler, meant for the hatch. This one is delicate, filigreed. 2 keys, 2 paths. My mind races back to the codex instructions. One unlocks the light. One unleashes the shadow. I look from the key in my hand to the figure's key. Which is which? I murmur. The figure's mouth curves into something like sympathy. The choice reveals itself only in action. Behind me, the frescoed figures seem to lean forward, their painted eyes following my every move. The scent of melting wax and damp stone fills my nostrils. My glove trembles as I weigh the keys. Duty demands I protect the priceless art and the lives it shelters. But the Codex's words echo, protect the light or unlock the darkness. A soft whisper brushes my ear, Custodia. Guard. I close my fist around my key. The ornate one seems to glimmer, tempting. I step forward, toward the figure and the high altar beyond. Footsteps thunder from the gallery entrance. I turn. A unit of Swiss Guard in ceremonial uniform stands frozen, eyes wide beneath their plumed helmets. Their swords are drawn, blades catching candlelight. Captain Rinaldi leads them, face pale. He opens his mouth, then closes it, uncertain. I raise a hand. Hold, my voice cracks. Stand down. I glance at the figure. It inclines its head. The guards lower, but remain alert. Rinaldi steps forward, gaze flicking between me and the figure. Luca, what is this? I press the key into Rinaldi's hand. I think this is the choice. He stares at the key, then at me. Behind him, the guards shift, uneasy in this sacred chamber. I turn back to the figure. If I give this key to you, what then? It will open the way to the darkness beneath, it replies softly, to secrets that hunger for release. Once unsealed, even the Custos cannot contain them. My breath catches. The weight of centuries of silence presses on me. I think of the Codex's vow, serve in silence, to guard, to never speak, to bear the burden alone. I glance at Rinaldi, whose jaw is clenched. He nods, almost imperceptibly, trusting me, his veteran officer. I step away from the altar, back toward the chapel doors. The figure follows, silent. I raise my arm. The Swiss guards straighten, swords at the ready. The frescoed prophets loom above, their painted eyes accusing. The vaulted ceiling seems to contract. Every flicker of candle flame feels like a heartbeat. In that suspended moment, I make my choice. I step through the threshold, leaving the chapel proper, and turn the ornate key in the lock beside the service door. The tumblers click. The stone around the lock vibrates. Behind me, the high altar bells toll, though no bell was rung. The air twists, light bending. I hear a low rumble, like distant thunder beneath the earth. The service door swings inward, revealing a hidden stair spiraling down into deeper darkness than before. The robed figure inclines its head. The path to shadow opens. Will you follow? My heart hammers. Rinaldi calls, Luca, no, but I step forward. The air at the stair mouth is frigid, smelling of earth and old blood. Each step downward seems to drain the warmth from my bones. Candle sconces appear on the walls, black iron holding no flame. Only darkness beyond. My boots echo on stone. The codex pulses in my jacket. I glance back. The chapel above glows faintly, a sanctuary receding. The figure stands at the top, waiting. I take a breath, police training, faith, fear all coiling inside me, and step into the abyss. At each landing, the walls are carved with scenes of guardians past. Hooded figures locking doors, turning keys, standing vigil over sleeping saints. Their faces are solemn, their hands steady. I feel their watchful presence. 10 steps down, I reach a landing. A heavy iron door bars my way, ringed with runes. The ornate key in my hand hums. I insert it. The runes flare with pale light, then the door swings open. Inside is a chamber larger than any I've seen, vault-like, lined with niches. Each niche holds an artifact: a shattered papal seal, a blood-stained Swiss Guard helmet, a broken rosary tangled in barbed wire. In the center, an empty pedestal shaped for the codex. The figure stands beside it. I step forward, place the codex on the pedestal. The chamber vibrates, the artifacts tremble. A low chorus of whispers rises, Latin, ancient dialects, voices of guardians long dead. My radio crackles, impossibly, from my pocket. Rinaldi's voice cut through. "Luca. Location, respond." I hesitate. The codex pulses. The whispers crescendo. Custodia, serva, guard, serve. I close my eyes. I think of the basilica above, the gardens, the sleeping city, of the oath I took, of the burden I accepted. I press my palm to the codex's cover. "I serve," I whisper. The whispers hush. The chamber falls silent. The artifact's glow dims. The codex locks itself with a soft click. The ornate key vanishes from the pedestal. I open my eyes. The figure is gone. The iron door behind me stands open, revealing the spiral stair back to the chapel. I ascend, each step lighter than before. Emerging into the chapel corridor, I see the Swiss guards at attention. Rinaldi's eyes hold a mixture of relief and awe. I tuck the codex into my jacket. He murmurs, "What happened down there?" I offer only a small, tired smile. "The secret is safe." He nods, uncertain. We turn toward the chapel doors. The frescoes above seem calm, guardians once more. As I step into the moonlit nave, I realize the choice has bound me forever. I am custodian of shadows and light, the silent guard. And somewhere, far below, the darkness waits, sealed by my vow, watching, patient, until it is needed again. The corridor's chill follows me like a living thing as I climb the spiraling stair back toward the chapel. Each step is etched with the dampness of ages, and my boots echo in the hollow shaft. My breath steams in the thin air. The Codex 42's cover presses against my chest, its weight a constant reminder of the covenant I've sworn, to guard the Vatican's deepest secret. When I emerge into the service corridor outside the Sistine Chapel, the ornate key is gone, absorbed back into whatever realm it came from. The corridor lights hum with normalcy. The wooden crates stand undisturbed. The Swiss guards cluster at the far end, tense and wide-eyed. Captain Rinaldi steps forward, glancing at the service door as if expecting it to vanish. "Luca," he exhales, voice trembling. "We heard a rumble. The door slammed. We thought—" I cut him a quick, firm nod. "It's secure." I slip the codex into my inner jacket pocket. No sign of intruder. The reliquary hall is clear. He studies me, then turns to his men. "Sweep it, then get me a report." The guards fan out. Their polished helmets gleam in the fluorescent light. I watch them go. Then I step into the Sistine Chapel itself. The great doors swing open silently. Inside, the vast nave is empty, hushed as a crypt. Moonlight filters through the high windows, painting the marble floor in pale rectangles. The frescoes overhead, creation, prophets, the Last Judgment, lie serene, untouched. Yet I sense a tremor in the air, as if the chapel itself has inhaled sharply and holds its breath. I move down the center aisle toward the high altar. Each footfall squeaks softly. My heart hammers, memory of the subterranean chamber vivid, the artifacts trembling, the whispers, the codex clicking shut. I pause at the altar rail, fingertips brushing the cool marble. I bow my head. "In your service," I murmur, half to God, half to whatever ancient power dwells below. The silence answers. A faint scrape draws my gaze to the north wall. There, a small panel in the wainscoting, previously unnoticed, stands ajar. The edge is carved with the same runic shapes I saw on the iron door below. My pulse hitches. I step closer, hand hovering over the panel. I press. It swings inward on hidden hinges, revealing a narrow slit lined with shadow. I don't want to look, yet I can't resist. I lean forward. Darkness beyond, deeper than the service corridor, as if a wound in the chapel's fabric has opened. A whisper, so close I feel its breath. Custos. I stagger back, heart in my throat. The panel clicks shut. I place a finger against my lips. The chapel is silent again. The guard's footsteps down the service corridor drift faintly through the wall. I realize the chapel itself is layered with secrets. One more threshold I must guard. I step away and close the panel fully, aligning it flush. The runes fade into the wood grain. I press my palm to the wall. It's solid, ordinary. I turn toward the high altar. The candles there are newly lit, though no one entered. Their flames flicker without breeze. I stabilize my breathing. The codex pulses under my jacket. Time to leave, I whisper to myself. I retrace my steps through the nave, pausing once to look back at the frescoes. In the dim light, the figures seem to watch me depart, serene but vigilant. Exiting through the service door, I find Rinaldi awaiting with 2 guards. His expression is unreadable. I hand him a sealed departmental envelope. Scene secure. No evidence of unauthorized entry, beyond what we already logged. He nods. Good work. Get some rest. He glances at the chapel doors. Something? Feel off? I meet his gaze. The chapel stands. All is well. I do not mention the hidden panel, the slit to darkness, the promise of secrets still waiting. Some truths must remain unspoken. As I step out into the Vatican gardens, the night air feels softer, the statues benign once more. The Swiss Guard tower lamp glows overhead. I inhale deeply, then release. Patrol continues. I check my watch, 3:33 a.m., another 90 minutes before my shift ends. I head toward the basilica steps. Each footstep on the marble is measured. I'm a cop, an officer of the law. Yet now also something more. Custodian of a covenant older than any statute. At the top of the steps I pause and look back at the dark silhouette of the apostolic palace. Moonlight gleams on its windows. Somewhere behind those walls lie corridors I can never walk again, secrets I can never share. I run a hand through my hair, feeling the weight of the codex beneath my jacket. A soft chime echoes from the basilica bells. 4 a.m. The signal for the morning mass preparations. Another world stirs to life. I radio in, unit Moretti to dispatch. Shift complete, returning to station. The reply crackles. Copy that. Good work, Moretti. Get some rest. I switch off my radio. Silence returns. Official procedural. I descend the steps into the St. Peter's Square. The colonnades stretch out like open arms in the silver night. For a moment, I consider slipping the codex into a locker and walking away from this burden. But as I reach into my jacket, my fingers close around its worn leather. I remember the whispers. Serve in silence. Guard the secret. The darkness waits. I tuck the codex deeper and step into the waiting cruiser. The engine's rumble is comforting. As I drive away, I glance in the rearview mirror at the dome of St. Peter's, luminous against the pre-dawn sky. Behind me, the Vatican sleeps. Beneath it, shadows stir, and I, Luca Moretti, Vatican City Police, am their silent sentinel. The fog lay heavy over the Vatican gardens as I stepped off my scooter, the motor's hum dying in the stillness. My boots sank slightly into the dew-soaked grass. Ahead, the dim glow of the Swiss Guard tower lantern wavered, casting long, quivering shadows across the cobblestones. The night was unnaturally silent. No distant church bells, no soft footsteps of late-hour tourists, only the faint susurration of wind through cypress branches. I clipped my radio to my belt and clicked the flashlight on. The beam cut through the mist in a narrow cone, illuminating droplets dancing like motes of dust in a sunbeam. Every instinct told me this shift would be different. I began my patrol along the perimeter wall, ancient travertine blocks streaked with centuries of moss and soot. Each stone seemed to breathe with history, as though the weight of every pope and pilgrim ever walked pressed into its surface. My hand drifted toward my service pistol, not out of fear of people, but because some things lurking in silence felt worse than any human threat. The report of unauthorized entry had come from the Apostolic Palace service corridors. Candles overturned, faint Latin murmurs in empty rooms. Doors that should be locked found ajar. Standard break-in protocol said vandals or thrill-seekers, but the language of the reports carried a tremor, an edge of something uncanny. I walked past the bronze statue of St. Michael atop the guardhouse, its sword raised as if to cleave the darkness itself. Underneath, my radio crackled. "All quiet on your end?" It was Rossi, my partner stationed near St. Peter's Square. I answered in a calm tone. "Negative findings so far. No movement, no lights, just fog and stone." He chuckled softly. "That square'll be empty at this hour. Keep your eyes peeled around the archives." He didn't elaborate, and I didn't press. Vatican protocol discouraged idle chatter on sensitive matters. Turning toward the low-arched corridor that led to the archive wing, I passed beneath flickering sconces. Each torch cast a halo of orange light that vanished 3 feet away, leaving twin ribbons of pitch-black shadow. My boots clicked on mosaic floors, ivory and cobalt patterns depicting saints and scrollwork. My breath fogged in the chill air. Somewhere ahead, a single candle guttered, though I'd seen no one ignite it. The light danced against the walls like a heartbeat, then snapped out. My flashlight caught the sudden void, and I paused, pulse quickening. A door lay slightly open, iron-clad, bearing the legend Archivio Segreto. The lock had been forced. Splintered wood and bent metal straps told me someone had wanted entry. I radioed Rossi. Possible breach at secret archives. I'm proceeding inside. No sooner had I spoken than the corridor fell silent in a way that felt deliberate, as if the building itself were holding its breath. I stepped through the threshold. The air grew colder still. Moisture dripped from vaulted ceilings onto ancient parchment boxes. My flashlight beam swept across the shelves stacked with leather-bound tomes, papal bulls, and forbidden manuscripts. The scent of mildew and ink was overpowering. Every surface trembled with the weight of secrets. At the far end of the hall, a narrow stair led down into deeper vaults. From below came a faint rhythmic scraping sound, like a quill scratching on vellum, but slower, dragging. I descended, each step echoing hollowly. The scraping stopped when I reached the landing. My flashlight revealed a circle of faint footprints in dust, too slender for a guard's boots, too regular for wildlife. They led past me and disappeared into darkness. My radio crackled again, but I held my finger to the button. Better to confirm first. I whispered into the mic. "Rossi, did you hear any commotion near the archives?" Static answered. I cursed under my breath. Pressing on, I followed the footprints into a narrow chamber where a single candle flickered on a pedestal. The pedestal held an open codex. its pages yellowed, edges curling. The Latin script glowed in the candlelight. In umbris veritas latet. In shadows, truth lies hidden. A chill ran down my spine. I approached, boot heels clicking, and the candle's flame snapped out, plunging me into darkness. I fumbled for my flashlight, and when it clicked back on, the codex was closed. The room was empty. A soft thump sounded behind me, like a book dropped on stone. I spun, beam sweeping across dusty shelves. Nothing moved. The silence returned, heavier than before. My heart pounded in my ears. I took a deep breath and forced myself to check the pedestal. No footprints beyond that point. It was as if someone had vanished mid-ritual. I radioed, voice steady. "I'm in the lower vault. No sign of intruder. Recommend K9 unit sweep before morning." No response. I began to retrace my steps, but at the top of the stair, I froze. From the corridor came a low chanting, a single voice intoning words in Latin that twisted like barbed wire. "Custodi animam tuam. Custodi animam tuam." My training screamed that no service file authorized chanting in a papal archive. I edged forward, light trembling over carved reliefs of cherubs and martyrs. The chant grew louder, then cut off abruptly as I neared the archway. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear my own blood rushing. At the corridor's end, a robed figure stood with its back to me, hood drawn low. The red of the Vatican cassock was absent. This robe was black as spilled ink. No insignia, no rank. The figure's shoulders were unnaturally still. I cleared my throat. "Vatican police," I said. "Identify yourself." The figure did not move. Its robe pooled on the floor, as if it had no feet. I stepped closer. The air around it shimmered, and I thought I saw the stone floor warp. My flashlight beam danced across the folds of fabric, revealing nothing beneath. The figure turned slowly. No pivot of joints, but a sliding rotation. Where its face should have been was void, featureless darkness that seemed to absorb light. My mouth went dry. I raised my pistol, training the muzzle just below the hood. "Step away," I ordered, voice flat. No response. Then a whisper behind me, "Leave this place." I whirled. The corridor was empty. When I faced the figure again, it had inched closer, though I had not seen it move. My skin crawled. I felt the weight of centuries bearing down. The chant began again, faint, as if from far away. I pressed the muzzle to the robed chest. "Last warning," silence answered. Then the figure lifted a hand and pointed to the wall. My flashlight flickered, revealing a hidden alcove carved into the stone. Inside lay a sealed reliquary box, etched with incomprehensible runes. The chanting swelled for an instant, then stopped. The box creaked open on its own. I caught a glimpse of something pale, bone white, coiled within. Then the light blinked out completely. I was blind in darkness. My radio screamed static. I fumbled for my knife and struck a flint. One small spark, then the corridor glowed by a single match. The figure was gone. The reliquary lay open, empty. The alcove's runes glowed faintly before fading. My heart hammered. I snapped the match and drew a deep breath of cold, damp air. I had two choices: report what I'd seen and be relieved for shock, or destroy the box and forget this night ever happened. Duty won. I sealed the alcove, relocked the archive door, and ascended to the moonlit gardens. Outside, the fog had thickened. The scent of wet stone and roses mingled. I paused at the gate, hand on the latch. Behind me, the basilica stood dark and silent, its dome looming like a watchful eye. I closed the gate and heard the click echo like a gunshot. My scooter's engine came alive under my trembling fingers. I didn't look back. As I pulled away, my radio crackled with Rossi's voice. "Everything all right?" I swallowed. "Just another quiet night," I said. But I knew better. Some doors in the Vatican are sealed for a reason. Some chants are never meant to be heard, and some shadows are alive. My legs burned as I hurried across the marble expanse of St. Peter's nave, the low glow of emergency lights casting long, angular shadows that stretched toward me like dark fingers. Every footstep echoed off the towering columns, the sound magnified in the vast emptiness. The air smelled of incense and old stone, faint undertones of dust and something metallic, like blood. My radio lay silent against my chest. Dead. I tapped it. Static whispered back. I forced myself to calm my racing heart. Protocol demanded I check in, but there was no signal. I pressed on, moving toward the side door that led down to the necropolis beneath the basilica. The floor sloped gently, centuries of pilgrims' footsteps worn into the stone. As I descended, the temperature plummeted. My breath came in frosty puffs. The flashlight trembling in my hand caught on carved reliefs of saints and martyrs, their faces serene. Too serene, as if mocking my fear. At the bottom of the ramp, I passed through a narrow arch into the undercroft. Here, the walls were rougher, hewn from ancient Roman bricks, the mortar crumbling. Pools of standing water reflected my beam, fracturing it into jittery patterns that danced across the ceiling. The only sound was the drip of water and the distant thrum of my own pulse. Somewhere ahead, a door groaned on rusty hinges. I approached, pistol drawn. The door opened onto a small chapel carved into rock. Flickering votive candles lined the alcoves, though I had seen no one light them. The wax dripped in slow rivulets, forming odd shapes in the dim light. At the center stood a marble sarcophagus, its lid carved with the figure of a sleeping pope. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. The sarcophagus lid had been shifted, tilted at a slight angle as though something had forced it open. I knelt, sweeping my flashlight beam inside. A dark stain, almost black, marred the stone beneath the lid. It looked like liquid, pooled and congealed. I swallowed. "Back up," I muttered into the radio mic. Nothing. I scanned the chapel. The candles flickered, though no draft stirred. Then I heard a sigh, soft and human, coming from the sarcophagus. "Who's there?" My voice sounded hollow. The sigh repeated, longer, closer. I stepped back, heart hammering. The flashlight beam dropped to the floor, illuminating a smear of droplets leading away from the tomb toward a narrow corridor. The droplets glistened like oil. I followed them, each step echoing. The corridor ended in a sealed grill, a ventilation shaft large enough to crawl through. The grill had been bent inward. My training told me this was no ordinary break-in. Trespassers don't leave blood trails through papal crypts. I glanced at the grill. Beyond lay darkness. I crouched and shimmied through, scraping my uniform on the metal edges. On the other side, I landed in a tunnel dripping with condensation. The walls curved overhead. My flashlight revealed centuries-old fresco fragments, now peeling. The dripping was louder here, water hitting stone, punctuated by a faint, ragged breathing. I advanced, every muscle coiled. The tunnel sloped downward, leading to a larger chamber. The air grew oppressive, my chest tightened. At the far end, a robed figure knelt beside an overturned reliquary, hands buried in its contents. The figure's hood was down, long dark hair fell across pale shoulders. I could not see its face. I raised my pistol. "Vatican police, turn around slowly." No response. The figure's shoulders shook, as though weeping. I took another step. The figure rose, and the hair fell away to reveal a skull-white mask carved with anguished features. The mask's eyes were empty hollows. My mouth went dry. The figure raised its head, and the breathing stopped. Silence pressed in. Then the figure spoke, not in Latin, not in Italian, but in a voice that echoed from some hollow place. They should not have taken it. The words reverberated off the walls, though its lips did not move. My finger twitched on the trigger. "What have you taken?" I demanded. The figure tilted the mask toward me. In its hand it held a fragment of parchment, edges singed, covered in tiny script so dense it looked like a spider's web. I stepped closer, heart in my throat. The fragment rattled as the figure extended it toward me. I grasped it. The moment my fingers touched the parchment, the tunnel lights, small bioluminescent lamps installed for maintenance, snapped on all at once, burning bright. Every shadow vanished. The mask-wearing figure stood at the chamber's center, perfectly still. I saw now that its robe was soaked in dark fluid, pooling on the stone beneath. My radio crackled to life. "Enrico, respond." Rossi's voice, urgent. I snapped the mic. "Found intrusion in Necropolis. There's someone here. I need extraction." The line went dead again. The fragment in my hand felt hot. I squinted at the script, Latin, but interlaced with symbols I did not recognize. My pulse thundered. I realized with a jolt that the script matched the runes on the reliquary in the archives. A sudden noise made me whirl. The masked figure had vanished. The only movement was the swaying lamps and my own ragged breath. The corridor behind me stretched empty. The tunnel upward was dark. Panic flared. I ran. Fragment clutched like a shield, following the drip of fluid that led back to the grill. My boots slipped. I skidded, banging my knee on the stone. Pain flared, but I forced myself up. I burst back into the chapel, the sarcophagus looming. The lid was closed again as if nothing had happened. The stain was gone. Candlelight flickered steadily. I blinked, unsure if I dreamed the blood trail. I stuffed the fragment into my pocket and sprinted up the ramp. The vault corridor yawned ahead, silent. My flashlight beam trembled. At the archway, the robed void figure stood waiting, as though it had crossed through walls to intercept me. It lifted a hand and pointed back toward the chapel. My pistol felt heavy. I swallowed. "I have what you want," I said, voice shaking. The figure did not move. It simply watched. I took a hesitant step forward, and the figure dissolved into black smoke that curled around my legs. I stumbled, heart lodged in my throat, and the smoke coalesced into shapes. Faces contorted in silent screams, twisted limbs reaching for me. I fired a warning shot. The echoes roared. The smoke recoiled, then surged through the closed door of the chapel, leaving me alone. My chest heaved. I yanked the chapel door open and dashed outside into the misty night air. The Vatican gardens lay empty, dew-soaked hedges glistening. The Swiss Guard tower light winked far above. I raced across the lawn, not stopping until the iron gate clanged shut behind me. My scooter's engine sputtered to life. I fished the parchment fragment from my pocket. The symbols pulsed faintly, as though alive. I jammed it into the glove compartment. As I sped away, the gardens vanished in my mirror, swallowed by fog. I haven't slept since. The fragment remains sealed in evidence, though I'm not sure to whom. My report states only unauthorized access and possible structural damage. No mention of chanting, masks, smoke, or blood. No mention of the thing in the tunnel. Because some truths aren't meant for dossiers. Some shadows belong to places that never see daylight. And some nights, you carry what you find into your dreams, whether you want to or not. The damp leather of my uniform jacket clung to my skin as I roared away from the Vatican gates, tires spitting gravel. The empty streets of Rome stretched before me, pale cobblestones gleaming under sodium lamps, shutters drawn tight against the night. My heart hammered in my chest like a warning drum. I dared not look back at the gardens, where something ancient had stirred. By the time I reached the barracks garage, my hands trembled so badly I fumbled the ignition key. Rossi was there, leaning against his scooter with a half-smile that died when he saw my face. "Thought you'd radio for extraction," he said. His voice held both relief and a trace of accusation. "What happened?" I turned off the engine. The tunnel's chill still crawled along my spine. "Something moved beneath St. Peter's," I said, voice low. "Not a person, not anything human." I unzipped my jacket and fished out the fragment, crumpled and pulsing faintly in my palm. Rossi's eyes widened. "Where did you get that?" he whispered. I told him about the necropolis chamber, the mask, the reliquary, the runes. He ran a hand through his hair. "Enrico, this is beyond our protocol. You should have left the fragment where it was." I couldn't. It felt alive. I held it out. The script seemed to writhe beneath the surface, letters shifting when I blinked. Rossi swallowed. "We need to secure this in evidence and call the Archbishop's custodian, ecclesiastical police. They handle sensitive artifacts." I hesitated. In my gut, I knew that calling higher authority would trigger questions I wasn't ready to answer. The memory of the chanting, the void figure's pointing hand, the crawl of smoke, all pressed in. "Tonight," I said, "we bury it." Rossi frowned. "Bury evidence? That's career suicide. Better than unleashing whatever it is." I pocketed the fragment. "Come on." We drove in tandem to a secluded corner of the Gianicolo Hill, where ancient Etruscan catacombs yawned beneath an abandoned chapel. Rossi gripped his flashlight like a talisman as we climbed down the ladder into the limestone tunnels. The air was still. Our lamps cast tight cones of white light that jittered across damp walls. Every drop of water echoed. I found a loose slab of rock and pried it free. Beneath lay a cavity the size of a shoebox. I retrieved the fragment and placed it inside, then covered it with earth and replaced the slab. As I tamped the soil, Rossi whispered, "Do you really think that stops it?" I stood and brushed dirt from my hands. "I have to believe it." My voice sounded brittle. We climbed out into the night. Above, the city lights of Trastevere glittered. The wind carried distant church bells. For a moment, I thought I saw a black shape slip behind the chapel ruins, no more than a trick of the light. I shook my head. Back at the station, I filed an amended report. No anomalies found. Shift ended uneventfully. Rossi signed off without comment. He offered to cover the night shift tomorrow. I declined. My next duty was sunrise patrol near Castel Sant'Angelo. Anything to stay in the open air. Sleep came in fits. I dreamed of the crypt, the mask's empty eye sockets pressing close, the rasp of pages turning themselves, a voice whispering, "Return what was taken." I bolted awake before dawn, sheets tangled, heart racing. My phone buzzed. A text from Rossi. "Be careful. I saw you slip out last night. If something follows you home," I didn't reply. Instead, I showered and went on patrol. Daylight was a balm. Tourists clustered in the square, snapping photos. Pigeons cooed around the obelisk. I walked among them, the weight of my duty pressing like armor. Still, every shadow beneath a column, every flicker of movement in a side chapel made me flinch. Late afternoon, I returned to the barracks. Rossi was waiting. He held an envelope sealed with red wax. "This arrived for you," he said. I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of vellum, blank except for one line scrawled in the same tiny, crowded script as the fragment. "They watch through opened doors." No signature. My blood ran cold. I looked up at Rossi. His face was pale. "What now?" I whispered. He shook his head. "We go back." That night, we returned to Gianicolo. The chapel ruins lay under a waning moon. We found the slab shifted, edges cracked, soil disturbed. The cavity was empty. The fragment was gone. In its place lay a scattering of fine white dust and one intact rune from the reliquary box, carved on a chipped flake of stone. I picked up the rune. The air grew frigid. A distant chant rose on the wind, indistinct, mocking. Rossi grabbed my arm. "Let's go." I pocketed the rune. We fled down the hill, the chant swelling, then vanishing. At the bottom, the city lights blinked as if nothing had happened. Now I carry the rune in my breast pocket and sleep with the window open, afraid to close the circle. My radio sometimes crackles with whispers in Latin I don't recall hearing. My dreams are corridors of stone and ink, and I wake to find footprints on the marble floor, leading toward the gardens. Tomorrow night I'm back on shift. The archives await, the tunnels yawn, the shadows stir. And I know that whatever watches through opened doors has not forgotten me. Because you don't bury a secret in Vatican stone. You only postpone its rising. I clipped the rune to my uniform chest pocket before leaving the barracks, its rough edges pressing cold against my skin. The Vatican gardens lay before me under a sallow moon, silvering the rose bushes and ancient travertine. Every fountain was frozen mid-gurgle, every shadow pooled like ink. I could taste the tension in the air, something waiting. I stepped beneath the wrought iron gate and it clicked shut behind me, echoing down the empty colonnades. My footsteps sounded loud on the cobblestones as I made my way back toward the Archivio Segreto. The basilica rose behind me, a hulking silhouette against the night sky. I passed under flickering sconces and into the corridor where I'd first seen that void figure. The torchlight danced across the mosaic floor, emeralds and golds fractured into shards of light and dark. I held my breath, remembering the chanting, the scraping, the way the stones themselves had seemed to breathe. At the archive door, I paused. The lock was intact. No sign of forced entry this time. I drew my pistol and pressed my shoulder into the door, swinging it open. The hinges groaned, and I half expected ash to drift out, but the vault lay still, ordinary. My flashlight beam swept the shelves of manuscripts and reliquaries. The air smelled of dust and leather. I stepped inside, heart hammering, and closed the door behind me. I laid the rune fragment on a polished table, the carving facing up. Its lines glowed faintly, as though warmed by some internal fire. I knelt and ran a finger over the etching, a looping spiral that ended in a serrated edge. It matched nothing in the official codex of papal seals. Someone, something, had crafted it for another purpose. I half expected the room to tremble, but it remained silent. I retrieved the battered codex from the pedestal where I'd left it in part 1. The pages were brittle, edges curled with age. I flipped to the page marked, "In umbris veritas latet." Beneath the heading, margins were filled with scribbles in the same spiderweb script. Prayers crossed out, pleas for mercy, warnings to seal the door. My pulse spiked. I read aloud in a whisper, "He who opens this seal invites the watcher." A distant drip echoed. I froze. The beam of my flashlight snapped toward the sound. Nothing but rows of silent books. I exhaled. The drip came again, slower. Drop. Pause. Drop. It was coming from the far corner. I advanced, boots muffled on the carpet runner. There, half hidden in darkness, stood the black-robed figure. No mask this time, but long hair matted with damp, face turned away. It rocked gently, like someone in prayer. "Identify yourself," I said, voice steady despite my pounding heart. The figure remained still. I stepped closer. The soft rasp of fabric on stone filled the vault. My flashlight beam settled on the figure's hands. They were wrapped around something small and trembling. A human heart? No, too small. I leaned in. It was the reliquary shard from Gianicolo, the chipped flake carved with the same rune. The figure pressed it to its chest. I swallowed. "What are you?" The figure turned. Its face was pale, eyes rimmed with red, pupils unnaturally dark, lips parted in a silent sigh. Then its mouth opened and a voice issued, not its own, but many voices layered. A priest's chant, a child's cry, a guard's radio static. "You have taken what binds us," it whispered. A tremor ran through the floor. The shelves rattled, candles flared and guttered. I stepped back. The rune in my pocket burned like a coal. The vault walls seemed to stretch, the ceiling vaults warping. Books slid from shelves, pages flipping. The figure raised its arms, and the air filled with Latin whispers. "Opening the door! Opening the door!" I fumbled for my radio. "Mayday, vault breach, need immediate backup." Static swallowed my words. The chanting rose to a crescendo, then stopped as the figure advanced. I raised my pistol, hands shaking. The figure stopped a foot away, eyes locked on mine. I saw sorrow there, and something older, rage, longing, an ache that transcended centuries. It lifted a finger and traced a line in the air. The rune on my chest glowed white-hot. I felt a jolt, as if struck. The vault dissolved into smoke and flame behind my eyelids. When I blinked, I was alone. The shard lay on the floor, blackened, lifeless. The codex snapped shut on its own. The light steadied. A silence pressed in again. I dropped to my knees, chest heaving. The shard was gone. I patted my chest. The rune had vanished too. My uniform felt loose, as though something had slipped out. I rose unsteadily and scanned the vault. Nothing moved. My flashlight beam settled on the archive door, where footprints in ash trailed away. I followed them out into the corridor. The torch flames burned steady now, no flicker. The church bells chimed in the distance. 3 a.m. I stepped into the gardens. The mist curled around my ankles and I heard a whisper, "Thank you for freeing me." I spun, but no one was there. Just the hedges and statues silent in moonlight. In my hand, I found a scrap of parchment, the codex page, torn out, reading, "Custodi animam tuum," or they will claim it. Underneath, a smudge of dark red. My radio crackled. "Enrico, you there?" It was Rossi. I didn't answer. I tucked the parchment into my pocket and walked away. Behind me, the Vatican dome gleamed. The sentinel that had watched over centuries of secrets. I don't know what I unleashed tonight. I don't know who or what slipped past the seal, but I felt its presence riding with me on the scooter, a pulse against my spine. I slipped the parchment into an evidence locker marked restricted, then locked it with 3 separate keys. Tomorrow, I'll patrol the Swiss Guard Tower. I'll watch the mist swirl around the columns. I'll listen for chanting in the walls. And I'll wonder whether the watcher is content or merely waiting for me to open another door. Because some seals once broken can never be mended, and some watchers once freed never sleep. I pushed away from the cool stone wall of the Apostolic Palace corridor, every muscle trembling. The parchment in my pocket burned like a live coal, its edges curled from the damp. Ahead, the vault door to the Archivio Segreto stood shut, silent as death. Behind me, the gardens whispered in the night breeze. I swallowed hard, holstered my pistol, and slid the heavy key into the lock. The door swung open with a deathly groan. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the scent of old leather. My flashlight beam trembled across row upon row of forbidden manuscripts. Every shelf seemed to lean toward me, as though eager to spill its secrets. I stepped in, heart hammering, and closed the door gently behind me. The latch clicked, a final barrier between me and the world above. I set the torn codex page on the table, smoothing it beside empty ink pots and scattered quills. Its message, Custodi animam tuum, or they will claim it, felt like a promise and a threat. I shivered. Somewhere deep in these vaults, something stirred in response. I could feel it, a shudder in the stone, a sigh in the air. A distant drip echoed. I followed it to a narrow side alcove I'd never noticed. The candlestick there lay overturned, wax pooled like spilled blood. Footprints in dust led past an iron grill, footprints too small for any guard, too precise for a rat. They vanished into the wall. I knelt, pressing my palm to the cold stone. A seam in the masonry gave a faint vibration, an indication of a hidden passage. I pressed my shoulder into the wall. It gave way with a soft click. The stone panel swung inward, revealing a shaft of darkness. A wisp of cold air drifted out, carrying a faint scent of incense and something fouler, rotting parchment, old magic. My training screamed retreat. My curiosity drove me forward. I crouched and entered. The panel closed behind me, sealing with a whisper. My flashlight beam caught on carved symbols, spirals and runes matching the rune I'd buried on Gianicolo. The shaft sloped down, slick with moisture. Each step echoed, hollow and distant. Water dripped from unseen crevices, pooling at my feet. The beam danced across walls decorated with fresco fragments. Angels weeping, saints in torment, eyes gouged out. At the bottom, I entered a broad chamber hewn from bedrock. A low vaulted ceiling arched overhead, supported by pillars carved into twisted figures, half human, half beast. The floor was polished black stone, reflecting my beam like oil. At the chamber's center stood a stone dais, and upon it, a sealed reliquary chest bound with iron bands. This was no archiepiscopal artifact. It was older, predating Christianity, older even than Rome. My breath caught. The chest's bands bore the same runic spiral. I raised my pistol, hand shaking. Protocol forbade tampering with unknown artifacts. Yet the parchment's warning echoed, "They will claim it." I pressed my thumb to the spiral. It glowed faintly beneath my skin. The iron bands shuddered. A keyhole appeared where none had been. I glanced at the torn codex page in my pocket. The script there described the ritual. A single drop of human blood, spoken invocation in Latin, and the seal would break. The watcher would be freed, or bound, depending on the sacrifice. My heart thundered. I had the ritual in my mind, I had the blood. Weeks ago, I'd pricked my finger for a minor cut, enough blood to perform the rite. Duty warred with fear. If I opened it, I risked unleashing the Watcher fully. If I left it, the Watcher hunted me still. The chamber grew colder. My exhalations formed mist. From the shadows, a soft chant began, so low I thought it was in my head. Then it resolved into many voices. Guards, priests, children, all whispering the same phrase. "Open the seal! Open the seal!" The dais trembled. The reliquary chest rattled. My finger brushed the spiral on my chest pocket, gone. The rune's absence was a betrayal. I pressed the codex page to the chest band. The runes on iron glowed, matching the page. The lid cracked. I drew a breath and placed a drop of my blood on the spiral. The iron snapped open like a trap. The chest lid slid back. Darkness welled forth, a living shadow that spilled onto the floor. My flashlight flickered. The shadow formed shapes. Hands, writhing bodies, faces twisted in silent screams. My pistol dropped. I stumbled back. The shadow coalesced into the figure I'd seen before. Robe blacker than night, face a void, eyes burning with ancient hunger. "You have freed me," it intoned, voice like wind through tombs. "Now I feast." The chamber lights died. Only the watcher's eyes glowed. I fumbled for my radio. "Rossi, evacuate." Static, nothing. The watcher raised a hand. Behind me, the pillar's carved figures began to bleed dark ichor. The stone floor cracked. From the fissures rose skeletal hands grasping at the watcher, at me. I turned and ran, heart in my throat, racing up the shaft. The wall panel gave way. I emerged into the vault corridor, gasping. The torch flames were out. My flashlight beam was the only light. The watcher glided behind me, silent. I sprinted past the codex pedestal, past the archivist's tables, heart hammering. Each step felt like wading through water. At the archive door, I nearly collapsed. The watcher's presence filled the corridor, the air heavy, every shadow alive. I slammed the door, locked it, and raced down the basilica ramp toward the gardens. The watcher's laughter followed me, a hollow echoing sound that vibrated through stone. Outside, the mist curled. The iron gate stood open. I didn't hesitate. I vaulted through and slammed it shut. The latch clicked like a pistol shot. I leaned against it, chest heaving. The watcher's laughter faded, but I knew it was not gone. I stumbled to my scooter and sped toward the barracks. My hands were slick with sweat and something darker, ichor from the reliquary, I thought. When I reached the garage, Rossi waited, face drawn. "It's out," I whispered. I opened it. He nodded grimly. I felt it on the wind. He held out a small silver vial. "Archbishop's custodian sent this, a binding serum, ancient, untested." Inside swirled cloudy liquid. "We have one chance." I looked at the vial, then at the torn codex page poking from my pocket. The watcher's shadow gathered at the garage door, an inky haze pressing against the threshold. I held the vial aloft. "Together?" Rossi's jaw tightened. "Together." We stepped outside. The night air was alive with whispers. The watcher's shape solidified, tall, regal, terrible. Its eyes burned with expectation. I uncorked the vial. The serum glowed pale blue. Rossi produced a silver dagger etched with papal seals. I made a small cut on my palm and let the blood drip into the vial. The liquid flared. I raised it like a chalice. "For the soul of the basilica," I intoned, voice echoing. Rossi began the counter-chant from the codex margins, Latin words of binding and banishment. The watcher advanced, smoke swirling around its feet. I poured the serum onto the cobblestones. It hissed, steaming. The watcher recoiled, a howl that rattled windows across Rome. Rossi plunged the dagger into the ground, carving the rune spiral into the stone. The serum pooled in the carving. The watcher's form quivered, fragmented. Black tendrils writhed, then were drawn into the spiral like water down a drain. The serum sizzled, the rune glowed, and with a final wrenching cry, the watcher was pulled into the carving. The cobblestones snapped closed as if nothing had happened. Silence fell. The mist cleared. The garage lights flickered back on. The vial lay empty. The dagger's blade snapped off, handle only in Rossi's hand. The rune carving faded from the stone. We stood, panting, trembling. I looked at Rossi. "Is it done?" He nodded slowly. For now, but that binding won't hold forever. I swallowed. Then we prepare. Behind us, the Vatican dome gleamed under a sky turning gray with dawn. Tourists would arrive soon, oblivious. Guards would open the gates. All would seem normal. But we had faced the Watcher, and survived. We carried its seal inside us now, knowledge of shadows that never sleep. I slipped the torn codex page into a locked evidence safe. Rossi pocketed the dagger handle. We exchanged a look, solemn vow. The Watcher might return, through another door, another ritual, but we would be ready. As the first bells rang for morning mass, I whispered, "Some doors can be closed only by blood and faith." Rossi placed a hand on my shoulder, and we have both. We stepped into the waking city. The sun fractured on St. Peter's dome. The world stirred. Behind us, in the vaults below, the Watcher's seal pulsed faintly. Dormant, hungry, waiting. I didn't sleep that morning. By the time dawn's pale light filtered through the barracks windows, I had mapped every corridor of the Apostolic Palace in my mind. Every hidden door, every silent niche. I replayed the binding ritual over and over. My blood, Rossi's chant, the rune carved in stone. For a few heartbeats, the Watcher had been contained. But as the sun rose, I noticed a smear of dark red across my uniform cuff. Fresh, glistening, as though the reliquary's ichor had come home with me. The chaplain's bell rang for morning mass. I answered roll call, my voice hollow. Fellow officers chatted about traffic in Piazza San Pietro, about the Swiss Guards' new drill uniforms. I kept my eyes down, praying none would notice the stain. My radio crackled with routine. Lost tourist inquiries, maintenance checks, nothing about spectral intruders or ancient curses. I filed my evening report under Neil, the archetype of bureaucratic denial. By mid-morning, the stain had spread across my sleeve. I tore off the cuff and tucked it into my locker, evidence enough that something hadn't stayed buried. I slipped away to the gardens, where the roses glowed in the sun, and knelt by the spot where Rossi and I had performed the rite. The stone there bore no sign of carving. The grass lay smooth. Yet I felt the earth tremble beneath my palm, as if something bided its time below. I pocketed a handful of soil and carried it back to the station lab. Under magnification, dark flecks curved into familiar spiral marks. The binding rune washed into the earth, waiting to re-etch itself. I slid the sample into a sealed vial labeled classified. The Vatican's archivist would lock it in the underground vault, if he believed me. I wasn't certain he would. That afternoon, I returned to patrol by St. Peter's Square. Pilgrims clustered around the obelisk, snapping photos. I watched their carefree faces and wondered how many believed in shadows. A child chased a pigeon. Laughter rang like a benediction. For a moment, I almost envied them. But then the pigeons scattered, no gust of wind, no human shout, just a single dark shape gliding low across the plaza. I raised my flashlight reflexively. The shape skated along the rim of the fountain before vanishing into the basilica's portico. My pulse spiked. No one else noticed. I radioed Rossi. Possible figure sighted at St. Peter's. Meet me at the north portico. He replied with static, then silence. I knew he'd come. He always did. We converged at the north entrance as the crowds thinned. Rossi's face was drawn, eyes bloodshot. He held the silver dagger handle, the broken remnant of our binding tool. "It stirs again," he said. We stepped inside together. The marble floor was cool beneath our boots. Shadows pooled under columns. The hush felt sacred and wrong. I swept my light over the bronze doors of the confessional booths. Each one seemed to breathe. I heard, barely, a voice. A confession in Latin, urgent, terrified. I have opened the seal. Then silence. We followed the whisper to the subterranean crypt beneath the nave. The passage smelled of damp stone and incense. Candles burned in iron cages, though no one tended them. The watchers' laughter drifted on the air, soft, mocking. Rossi and I exchanged a look. At the crypt's threshold, the marble floor was cracked in a spiral pattern. The binding rune had recarved itself, hairline fractures spreading outward. The ground around the dais chest lay strewn with dust, the ancient reliquary's seal broken once more. Rossi stepped forward. We can't bind it again, not with what remains. He lifted the dagger handle. We need to destroy the chest. I shook my head. That chest predates Rome. If we break it, the Watcher will pour out without pause. He swallowed. Then we lure it back in. We retrieved the codex page from my breast pocket. The margins held a counter-ritual, a lure of light and voice, calling the Watcher home. It required a sacrifice. Memory, sight, something precious. We had already given blood, now we'd give ourselves. I set my pistol aside. Rossi laid the dagger handle on the dais. We positioned the torn codex page under the spiral crack. I took a steadying breath and began to read the invocation, voice low. By blood and word, by vow unbroken, I call the Watcher to this circle. Return to seal, return to shadow, bound by faith, bound by sorrow. Rossi joined in, tone rising, filling the crypt. The rune's cracks glowed with pale light. The Watcher's laughter coalesced into a moan, distant at first, then roaring as it surged toward us. The air rippled, the walls bent inward. From the fissures, black mist swirled, forming the Watcher's shape, its void eyes fixed on the torn page. I continued chanting, soul for soul, sight for sight, name your price, fulfill your right. Turn your hunger inward now, close the gap, restore the vow. The Watcher paused, head tilting. A hush fell so deep I heard my own heartbeat. Then it spoke a single word. Remember. In that moment, pain seized my mind. A flood of memories ripped away. My first solo patrol, the face of my mother at dawn, the taste of espresso in the guardhouse. I staggered, vision swimming. Rossi caught me. Hold on, he shouted, weaving the chant into a crescendo. The rune's light flared white. The Watcher's form shuddered, flickered. It seemed to hesitate, torn between hunger and binding. Then the light snapped out. I collapsed as the Watcher dissolved into a spiral of dust, sucked back into the cracks. The rune sank beneath the stone, leaving the floor whole once more. The chest's bands resealed. Silence reigned. I lay on the marble, panting. Rossi knelt beside me, eyes wet. You did it, he whispered. I closed my eyes. When I opened them, the crypt was empty. No sign of binding marks, no codex page, nothing but polished stone. We had sacrificed memories. The Watcher had been banished, for now. We climbed back into the plaza just as morning tourists arrived. A stray sunbeam struck the obelisk. Children laughed. Guards marched in crisp formation. No hint remained of the night's horrors. Rossi and I parted with a solemn nod. He would guard the archives, I would resume perimeter patrols. We carried our losses in silence. Names and moments we could no longer recall, traded for the world's safety. Tonight and every night I will walk these corridors, listening for whispers in Latin, watching for shapes behind pillars. I will check every door, every seal, knowing some cracks reappear. The Watcher sleeps beneath the basilica, bound by blood and vow, but it dreams in shadow, and I am its sentinel. Because some doors once opened echo forever in the soul. You'd think by hour 10 the basilica's chill would be familiar, but tonight the stones felt sharper under my fingertips. I'm Inspector Marco Ferri, Vatican Gendarmerie, and when the brass rang in that whisper, Archives Annex, odd noises, you know it isn't a prank. My torch beam danced across the mosaic floor, every colored tile cracked with centuries of footfalls. Silence pressed in, broken only by the faint hum of the ventilation and my own breath. Corporal DeLuca's radio crackled. "Still clear at Swiss Guard Tower," he reported 2 levels above. I acknowledged, voice clipped. Below us, the old archives lay like a sleeping beast, rows of iron shelves heavy with parchment. We'd patrolled those corridors a dozen times. Each time the hush grew deeper, as if the walls absorbed sound like ink on vellum. I eased through the oak door marked Archivum Secretum, the secret archives. Candles flickered in sconces, though no one had lit them. The wax dripped in slow rivulets, as though time itself bled in this hollow. My pulse thumped. Every instinct screamed that someone, or something, had been here since last patrol. A soft scrape echoed from the far corner. DeLuca and I froze. Footsteps? A sliding shelf? I raised my service pistol. "Stay alert," I murmured. We advanced, boots whispering on dust. The beam caught fresh scratches on the limestone wall, parallel gouges, as if claws raked toward the floor. DeLuca swallowed. "That's new," he said. We followed the marks to a steel grate set flush in the wall. It hadn't been there on the plans. I pried it open. The metal groaned like a wounded animal. A tunnel yawned beyond. Cold air exhaled its dank promise. I glanced at DeLuca, his jaw set. We slipped inside. The crawl space narrowed, bricks slick with moisture. Every drop from above sounded like a hammer strike. Our lights bobbed, carving arcs through the black. The tunnel ended in a vaulted chamber beneath the Vatican gardens. Moonlight filtered through iron bars overhead, illuminating a sarcophagus carved with papal insignias. Candles burned at its corners. A figure stood by the tomb, hooded, motionless. My heart hammered. "Police," I called. The figure tilted its head. The robe fell away, revealing not flesh but shadow. A voice hissed. He kept the secret. "Now you guard it." The words crawled under my skin. Instinct made me fire. The shot echoed like thunder. When the smoke cleared, the hooded shape dissolved. No body, no blood, only the sarcophagus lid cracked ajar. I stepped forward, hand trembling, and peered inside. Dust, and an ancient key, wrought iron etched with Latin. My radio erupted. "Inspector Ferri, you copy?" DeLuca's voice tethered me back. I secured the grate, pocketed the key. "Evidence," I said, "and a question." Behind us, the tunnel sealed itself. Bricks shifting as if alive. The corridors snapped back to emptiness. Candle flames guttered. Silence returned, heavier than before. I emerged into the basilica's nave. The colored light had faded. The moon had moved. The key burned in my palm. I knew orders would come. Seal the chamber, file the report, transfer the key to the archives prefect. But I also knew the real secret had chosen me. My breath caught as I passed the Swiss Guard Tower. In the mesh of shadows, I thought I saw that robed silhouette slip between the battlements. No flesh, only darkness. It paused, as if watching me, then vanished into the night. I walked back to the annex door. The basilica lay silent, holy and terrible. The key weighed heavy in my pocket, a promise or a curse. I've locked it away in evidence, but every patrol since, I feel its whisper against my heart. What does it open? And who will next heed its call? My heartbeat hadn't settled by the time I reported in for the next night shift. The corridors of St. Peter's felt different now, as though every shadow might conceal that robed silhouette. every echo a whispered summons. I kept the ancient key taped inside my jacket pocket, its cold weight a constant reminder. At 0015, I met Corporal DeLuca at the Swiss Guard Tower as usual. He glanced at my chest and nodded toward the bulge under my shirt. "You still carrying that thing?" he asked quietly. I offered a half smile. "Evidence chain," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "Or a death sentence." We began our perimeter sweep through the Apostolic Palace wings. The grand halls lay empty, frescoed ceilings looming overhead, the marble floor slick beneath our boots. At each turn, I found myself expecting that dark figure to step from an alcove. Instead, only silence and the distant drip of water. We paused outside the archives annex. The heavy oak door stood shut, but I felt a tremor in the air, like static before a storm. I placed my palm against the wood. It was warmer than the surrounding stone, faintly vibrating. DeLuca frowned. "You feel that?" I nodded. Something's changed. Inside, the flickering sconces were brighter tonight. No wax strips. Whoever or whatever lit them did so deliberately. My torch beam swept the shelves. The key burned against my ribcage. I thought of the cracked sarcophagus lid and the emptiness beneath. What secret lay hidden beyond the lock? A sudden clatter made us both jump. A steel shelf toppled in the far corner, books cascading like a scream. DeLuca trained his light there. Nothing. I moved forward, boots amid scattered manuscripts, and saw footprints in the dust. Small, barefoot, leading to the grate we'd sealed. My pulse spiked. "Another entrance," DeLuca whispered. I knelt to inspect the grate's bolts, undisturbed. Yet the footprints led directly over it. It was impossible. I rose and scanned the rafters. Somewhere above, a faint scratching, like talons on wood. We followed the sound up a narrow service stair. It deposited us in a forgotten maintenance crawl, wires hanging, pipes dripping. The air was colder here, an unnatural chill. My breath curled in the beam. DeLuca paused at a junction. "Branch left or right?" he murmured. I chose right, drawn by a low moan, half human, half wind through stone. The tunnel turned sharply and opened into a hidden corridor, one I'd never seen on any plan. Mosaic tiles underfoot depicted cherubs and saints, their faces chipped. Torchlight revealed Latin scrawls on the wall. Non nobis sed nomini tuo. Not to us, but to your name. The phrase glowed with menace. I traced the letters with my finger. The key responded with a faint hum. DeLuca swallowed. "Inspector, maybe we should—" I shook my head. "We're here. We finish this." My voice sounded hollow even to me. We pressed on until the corridor ended at a sealed door of black iron. In its center, a keyhole shaped like the one on my key. I slid the key free. It fit perfectly. My hand shook as I turned it. The lock clicked. The door swung open silently, revealing a vast chamber lit by torches set in wall brackets. The air smelled of damp earth and incense. In the center lay an altar of carved stone, stained dark at its edges. Surrounding it, dozens of wax candles formed a ring, some half-melted, others fresh. At the altar's foot lay scattered relics, a shattered chalice, fragments of bone in a silver reliquary, parchments with arcane diagrams. My stomach clenched. This was no ordinary hidden archive. It was a clandestine shrine. DeLuca swept the beam across the walls. Frescoes of angels falling, popes in supplication, a hooded figure bestowing a crown of thorns upon a skeletal hand. The artistry was exquisite and horrifying. It depicted a secret heresy, a cult within the church who believed they could commune with something beyond death. A soft voice echoed, "You should not have come." We spun. At the far end, the robed shape stood in shadow, hood low. Its presence swallowed light. DeLuca raised his weapon. I did the same. The figure lifted a hand, revealing a fragment of parchment pinned to its sleeve. The same papal seal as the key. "Why guard what was never meant to be found?" it intoned. The voice was both distant and inside my head. My breath caught. I wanted to ask who it was, what it wanted, but words failed me. The figure gestured. The candles flickered violently, though no draft stirred. Shadows leapt off the walls, coalescing into shapes. Faces twisted in silent screams. My gut roiled. DeLuca shouted, "Fall back!" but I felt rooted, drawn toward the altar. My mind raced. Protocol, backup, evidence, but none of it mattered. The air thrummed with power. I took a step forward. The figure extended the parchment. A map, showing Vatican beneath Vatican, layers of crypts and tunnels older than Rome itself. At its bottom, an X beneath the obelisk in St. Peter's Square. I realized then, this secret extended far beyond archives. It lay at the heart of the city, under the very feet of pilgrims. The figure whispered, "Open the gate!" DeLuca grabbed my arm. "We leave now!" His voice snapped me back. I tore my gaze away and shoved the door. It slammed shut. The lock snapped home. The corridor fell silent. The shrine vanished as if it had never been. We sprinted back through the tunnels, the Latin scrawls on the walls fading behind us. My boots skidded on the mosaic. The grate gave way to the archives, then the basilica steps, and finally the cold night air of the Vatican gardens. I gasped for breath, heart hammering. DeLuca leaned against a marble balustrade. "What the hell was that?" he panted. I clutched the key. Something ancient, something we're not meant to know. He glanced at the key. "What now?" I looked up at the obelisk, pale in moonlight. "We find out what lies beneath?" He frowned. "That's suicide." I nodded. "Maybe, but we swore to protect this city, even from itself." Behind us, the basilica's dome gleamed. The night was vast and silent. I slipped the key into my pocket. Whatever came next, I was bound to it. And somewhere, deep below, a gate waited. Dawn's first pale light was creeping across the cobblestones of St. Peter's Square when I finally peeled myself off the cold marble bench. My uniform was stiff with sweat and dust from the hidden corridors. My boots scuffed from the frantic flight through tunnels I'd never known existed. Corporal DeLuca was already awake, eyes bloodshot, leaning against the Swiss Guard tower with his arms crossed. He looked like hell. "I checked the archives," he said without preamble. "They found nothing. It's as if the door in that shrine never existed." His voice wavered. "The guards doing rounds swear they saw us enter the annex and never come out, but the logs show nothing after our patrol." I pocketed the ancient key. "We left no trace," I agreed, "except in our heads." I rubbed my temples. The memory of the frescoed angels, the ringing hush of the shrine, the parchment map pointing beneath the obelisk. Those images burned behind my eyelids. DeLuca pushed off the wall. "What now? We can't just—" He broke off, nodding at my hand. The key lay there, dull iron etched with papal seals. He frowned. "You still carrying that?" I hesitated, then nodded. "It's evidence, and maybe the only lead we have." He glanced at the obelisk looming above us, its shadow long in the morning light. "You want to go down there?" I swallowed. "I have to." That afternoon, I filed a terse report. Unidentified subterranean chamber discovered beneath Archives Annex. No physical evidence remains. Key recovered. Further investigation recommended. I glossed over the chant, the apparition, the cult imagery. No one would believe it. By evening, I'd arranged for discreet access to the crypts below St. Peter's Square. The prefect of the archives gave a curt nod when I mentioned structural survey. He knew better than to ask. The maintenance hatch at the base of the obelisk was normally sealed. Tonight, I had the codes. At 2200 hours, the square was deserted. The night guards of the Vatican gardens dozed behind potted laurel. I slipped past them, heart hammering, and crouched at the iron grate at the obelisk's foot. My glove scraped the lock. The key fit exactly. The mechanism turned with a click that echoed off the travertine. I held my breath and lifted the hatch. Below lay a narrow shaft descending into darkness. The air was stale, tinged with the smell of earth and something faintly metallic. I clicked on my flashlight. The beam revealed damp stone steps curling downward. Each tread was worn smooth by centuries of unseen passage. I heard a soft scuff behind me. DeLuca's voice. "I'm not leaving you." He climbed down. The hatch clanged shut above us. We stood shoulder to shoulder in the shaft, the world above reduced to a faint glow through the grate. "Stay close," I whispered. We began the descent. The steps opened into a vast subterranean gallery, larger than any crypt I'd known. The ceiling arched overhead, ribbed with carved stone like the hull of an inverted ship. My light swept across columns encrusted with Latin inscriptions and bas-relief scenes of martyrdom. Flickers of damp pooled at the base. The beam caught something glinting on the floor, a fragment of metal. I knelt and picked up a small piece of a broken seal, identical to the one on my key. "This is it," I breathed. "We're in the right place." De Luca shone his light down the gallery. There, arches. Beyond, a row of alcoves carved into the wall, each housing a niche. Some held skeletal remains in tarnished reliquaries. One was empty. The empty niche had fresh soil at its base, as if something had been recently interred or exhumed. A distant drip echoed. We moved forward, boots silent on ancient stone. The air grew colder. My breath fogged. The light flickered. I steadied the torch with a trembling hand. At the far end stood a second door, massive bronze, studded with iron bosses. No keyhole, only a bas-relief of a key and the words Clavis Eternitas, Key of Eternity. I pressed my palm to the relief. The door vibrated. Then, with a groan, it began to swing inward. We stepped through into a circular chamber. The walls sloped toward a domed ceiling lost in shadow. In the center, a stone dais ringed by broken fragments of what looked like stained glass. Colored shards embedded in mortar, depicting a celestial map. The pattern was fractured, but I recognized constellations. Ursa Major, Orion, Corona. At the dais's center lay a second key, this one crystalline, translucent, glowing faintly blue. DeLuca swallowed audibly. "What the hell is that?" I approached, heart in my throat. The crystal key hovered above the dais, suspended in a cradle of carved stone. As I neared, I felt a pressure in my skull, as if the air itself was imprinting thoughts. A voice, distant but clear. "Open the gate." I glanced at DeLuca. His face was pale. "I don't know if we should," but I couldn't stop. I reached out. The moment my fingers closed around the crystal, the chamber trembled. Light flared along the fractures in the mosaic ring, tracing lines of energy. The shards glowed, the celestial map spun, stars shifting. A low rumble began, rising to a roar. Shadows peeled off the walls, coalescing into forms. Angels with broken wings, figures in hooded robes, faces both human and otherworldly. They circled the dais, silent. The temperature plummeted. My breath came in ragged gasps. DeLuca shouted, "Inspector, we need to go, now!" I tore my hand away, crystal key clutched to my chest. Instantly, the rumble ceased. The spirits vanished, leaving only echo. The shards dimmed. The chamber fell silent, unnatural in its stillness. I looked at the crystal key. It pulsed, as if alive. It fit into a slot carved in the doorframe behind us. One I hadn't noticed before. 2 keys, iron and crystal. Together, they would open something immense. DeLuca shook me. "We can't stay, they'll come back." I nodded, voice hollow. "We ascend, but we keep this. We find out what it unlocks." We retraced our steps, the gallery swallowing us in its cold embrace. At the hatch under the obelisk, I paused. The crystal key's glow faded to a soft heartbeat. I replaced the iron key in my pocket, then clambered into daylight. Back in the basilica's nave, I cleaned dust from my uniform. De Luca avoided my gaze. The dawn bells tolled. Pilgrims would arrive soon, unaware of the gate sleeping beneath their feet. I tucked the crystal key into a hidden pouch. "We need analysis," I said. "Carbon dating, arcane inscriptions, everything." De Luca exhaled slowly. "And then?" I met his eyes. "Then we decide if we open the gate." He swallowed. "And if we do?" I closed my fist around the pouch. "Then we learn what lies beyond, or it learns what lies within us." In the hush before morning prayers, the basilica seemed to hold its breath. I walked away, each step echoing on marble. Beneath the obelisk, 2 keys slept, iron and crystal, waiting to unlock a secret older than the church. The weight of what we carried, 2 keys, iron and crystal, pressed on my mind as we prepared for the next night's venture. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that circular chamber, the spinning celestial map, the silent figures dissolving into shadow. I woke before my alarm, heart hammering. At 23:30, I met DeLuca outside the maintenance hatch by the obelisk. He held a discreet satchel with analytical instruments, a portable spectrometer, UV lamp, gloves. "Italian labs will take days," he muttered. "This at least tells us if the crystal is organic, synthetic, or something else." I nodded. "We don't have days." We descended into the shaft. The hatch clanged shut above. In the gloom, our flashlights trembled. The air was colder still than before, carrying an almost electric charge. I drew the crystal key from my pocket. It glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. "Place it under the spectrometer," I said. DeLuca set up the device on a flat stone near the bronze door marked Clavis Eternitas. The crystal's glow intensified as we worked. The spectrometer whirred, then the readout scrolled. Unknown crystalline structure, refracting wavelengths beyond normal visible spectrum. "It's not any mineral on record," DeLuca breathed. "And those energy spikes, are you seeing this?" The crystal emitted brief pulses of ultraviolet light, causing veins in the carved stone floor to fluoresce, a network of lines forming a pattern beneath the dais, previously invisible. I traced one with my boot. It led toward the outer wall, then split into 3 branches, each vanishing into shadow. A distant rumble echoed, a cave-in or something waking. We stood, breath caught. The bronze door before us shimmered, as if aware of the crystal's activation. The relief of the keyhole glowed. DeLuca swallowed. "Inspector, once we open it, there's no turning back." I rested my hand on the door. We didn't come this far to stop now. I inserted the crystal into its slot next to the iron keyhole. They fit together like sun and moon crossing. The door vibrated, then the entire gallery hummed. The fluorescent veins glowed brighter, illuminating hidden carvings on the walls. Figures kneeling before a great archway, beyond which lay a landscape of stars and swirling mist. With a final, resonant click, the door swung inward. A rush of wind spilled out, carrying the scent of ozone and something ancient. like dawn on the first day. We shone our lights into the threshold and saw nothing. A void, blacker than any shadow, as if the tunnel beyond had been swallowed by night itself. I stepped forward, boots crunching on stone. DeLuca followed, weapon drawn, the void stretched before us, framed by the carved arch. I felt a pull, not physical but deep in my mind, a beckoning. The edges of the void rippled, like oil on water. Then I saw movement within, a shape, tall and slender, stepping toward us. Its form was indistinct, made of shifting darkness and pale light, but its presence was undeniable. My pulse spiked. "Identify yourself," I called, voice echoing. The shape paused. From within its depths came a whisper, layered voices speaking across centuries. Guardian, seeker, key-bearer. DeLuca's light flickered across the figure. I thought I saw wings, tattered, luminous, a face, both beautiful and terrible. It raised a hand, and the void contracted, revealing a corridor beyond, lined with pillars that vanished into mist. "Enter," the voices intoned, "or turn back and forget." My throat went dry. DeLuca glanced at me, fear and awe warring in his eyes. "Marco, this is beyond any protocol." I swallowed. "But it's what we came for." I stepped into the void. The air closed around me like silk. DeLuca hesitated, then followed. The door swung shut behind us with a sound like a sigh. We emerged into the corridor depicted on the murals, pillars of smooth white stone, arching overhead into nothingness. The floor beneath our boots was polished, reflecting a sky of stars overhead. The air thrummed with silent music. I raised my flashlight, but its beam was absorbed. Instead, the stars above provided a gentle luminescence. The crystal key in my hand pulsed, guiding me forward. Each step echoed. I felt weightless, as if walking on the edge of dreams. A soft voice, childlike, curious, spoke from the darkness. "You have opened the gate." DeLuca's breath caught. "Who's there?" From between the pillars emerged a figure, a young woman in flowing robes, her hair like liquid starlight. Her eyes held galaxies. She smiled sadly. "I am the keeper of thresholds. You carry the keys of eternity." I swallowed. "What is this place?" She gestured. The stars shifted into constellations unfamiliar and ancient. "This is the in-between, where all gates converge. You stand at the crossroads of worlds." My mind reeled. We seek knowledge, purpose. Why guard this?" She stepped closer. "Long ago, your world turned its face from wonders and horrors it could not fathom. You locked this gate to protect yourselves and to forget, but some secrets yearn to be remembered." The corridor pulsed. Whispers drifted from unseen alcoves. Voices of those who'd come before. Explorers, heretics, dreamers. Their hopes and regrets seeped into my soul. DeLuca gripped my arm. "Marco, should we?" But I was lost in the vision. The keeper raised her hand, and a door of light formed at the corridor's end. Through it, I glimpsed vast landscapes, mountains of crystal, forests of silver flame, oceans under violet skies. "Choose," the voices whispered. "Enter and know, or return and remain." My heart thundered. I looked at DeLuca, his face pale, eyes wide. He gave a slight nod. I turned back to the keeper. "What happens if we cross?" She smiled, sorrowful. "You will carry this realm within you. You will never be the same, and you may never return." The corridor stretched, beckoning. The weight of duty pressed on me. The Vatican, the city, the world above, all oblivious to this doorway. I held the crystal key aloft. The stars danced. The mist parted. "Will you enter?" the keeper asked. Behind me, faintly, I heard the distant toll of St. Peter's bells. reminding me of duties, of life left behind. I glanced once more at De Luca. His hand hovered over my shoulder, hesitant. Then I stepped forward into the light. The stars closed around me, and the gate whispered shut. We emerged into silence. The corridor's luminescence winked out as the gate behind us sealed with a soft sigh. De Luca and I stood in the hidden gallery beneath St. Peter's Square, the crystal Kai's glow now a faint pulse in my palm. The air was still, heavy with the scent of damp stone and something more. Possibility, or perhaps warning. My knees ached, heart pounding. Did that really happen? De Luca's voice trembled. I nodded, though doubt clawed at me. The bronze door lay closed, unmarked, save for the words Clavis Eternitas. No sign of the void, the stars, the keeper, only our footprints and the shattered shards of colored glass around the dais. I slipped the crystal key into the satchel. We have proof, I said, and a responsibility. My uniform felt alien, as if I wore another man's name. De Luca helped me up the steps. Behind us, the gallery returned to shadow, the seal fragment glinting where I'd dropped it. We climbed toward the obelisk hatch, each rung echoing. When we climbed into the square, dawn light was pale on cobblestones. A lone Swiss guard strolled by, dutiful and unaware. We reported our findings to Prefect Moretti in hushed tones. He frowned at the sealed door, at the broken reliquary fragments, at the spectrometer readings. Impossible, he said. I pressed the crystal key onto his desk. Not impossible, hidden. His eyes flicked to the key. He paled. You risked everything. We did what was necessary, I replied. He nodded slowly. Very well, the church will decide what to do next. Until then, you and Corporal De Luca are sworn to silence. He slid the satchel into a safe. God help us if this falls into wrong hands. That night, the basilica's stones felt colder. I walked the nave alone, the iron key heavy in my pocket. Candles flickered along the aisles. My reflection in the marble was gaunt, wider eyes, tighter jaw. I whispered a prayer I wasn't sure I believed. Corporal De Luca joined me outside. Are you okay? He asked. I closed my fist around the iron key. I don't know. Everything's changed. I looked up at the dome. We opened a door to somewhere else. We carry the keys. He swallowed. And now? I slipped the crystal key from my satchel and held both keys to the moonlight. They pulsed in tandem, iron solemn, crystal otherworldly. Now we wait. Days passed. The Vatican hummed with business as usual. Tourists in the square, choir rehearsals in the chapel, Swiss guards on patrol. No sign of cultists, no whispered rumors. But I felt eyes on me in every corridor. Shadows stretched longer. At night, faint chanting drifted from sealed vents. One evening, I found a scrap of parchment slipped into my locker, a single Latin phrase, Mors Eternum Revelat. Death reveals eternity. No signature. My blood ran cold. I showed it to De Luca. He paled. They know. I nodded. We're not alone. That night I returned to the annex. The oak door stood shut. I pressed my ear to it. Silence. I tapped the iron key in its lock. It clicked, but the door did not open. Someone had barred it from the other side. Behind me, footsteps, soft, measured. I spun. Prefect Moretti stepped from the shadows, face grim. I'm sorry, he said. Orders. Before I could react, he pressed something into my hand. A small silver medallion, etched with the same papal seal. In case you need to call me. He turned and walked away. I stared at the medallion, then at the door. The weight of secrecy settled on me like a shroud. That night, I dreamt of the corridor of stars. The keeper stood waiting, keys in hand. She smiled, sorrowful. "You may return," she whispered, "but you will never leave." I woke in a sweat. The iron key lay on my pillow. Next to it, a shard of colored glass from the dais mosaic. Not in my satchel, not in the archive, somehow placed there. I rose and walked to the window overlooking St. Peter's Square. Below, the obelisk stood silent. The city slept. I held the shard to the moon. It pulsed softly as if alive. The choice lay before me still. Obey orders, lock away the keys and pretend none of this occurred, or venture once more into the in-between. Carry the burden of knowledge. Face whatever waits beyond. My hand tightened around the shard. What would you do, standing at a gate that promises both salvation and oblivion?